We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally.
For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. We're full on this Monday morning. Kendall, Elvis, and myself, Evan Jansen. It's nice to be with you. Well, for the first time this December. Now, today we focus on the 3rd anniversary of Madiba's death as the world commemorates the passing of former President Nelson Mandela today. Now, the anti-apartheid activist, hailed as the father of democratic South Africa, died 3 years ago at the age of 95 on this day. So, our question to you today, we're asking, what is your favorite Madiba quote? And there are a lot of them doing the rounds. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, Elvis. So we're talking to Professor Chris Landsberg a little bit later about tertiary education, looking back at the year that was.
It was a terrible year for especially higher education. We're going to focus on that as well as the summit that was held over the past week and get some feedback from him around.
Also, we're running a poll, and it's an interesting poll today.
A very interesting poll. The President, Jacob Zuma, says that it concerns him that church leaders are at the forefront of trouble and getting involved in politics when they should rather bring the community and politicians together. The question we pose to you is there a place for religion in politics? Thus far, on the poll, 46% are saying yes.
But 54% are saying there's no place for religion in politics.
Well, is that really the case? Well, that's the question we pose to you. 112 votes in. You can also vote, and you can send us a tweet on the question.
It's almost impossible to divide the two, I think, in South Africa. It's so intertwined throughout our history, in a way.
Especially where we come from during the apartheid struggle and how the churches collaborated with the African National Congress in order to overthrow the apartheid government. But we leave that up to you to give us your take.
Absolutely. At SABC Newsroom is where you interact with us on this story or any of the others, or just go and vote on the poll if you think that you don't want to be controversial this morning. Elsewhere, though, lots of news. Let's go to Elvis for our first update.
Let's stick with that top story. President Jacob Zuma says that religious leaders should not get involved in politics and rather focus on bringing the community and politicians together. Now, today marks the 3rd anniversary of the passing of Madiba, with commemorations taking place nationwide. And Cuba has ended a 9-day national mourning for Fidel Castro after laying his ashes to rest in a private ceremony in the city of Santiago. Sad pictures coming through there from Cuba as we commemorate Madiba as well here, and of course the death of Cuba. But right now, before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, Eben, the year is coming to a rip-roaring firecracker of an end. I mean, we had the Blitzbokke totally obliterate the opposition over the weekend, but also have quite a lot happening on the sporting front right here at home. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Well done, Brandon Stone. And that's a win which will mean very nearly as much as a South African Open win, his debut win on the European Tour.
South Africa's Brendan Stone wins big at the Alfred Handel Championship, walking away with a cool 2.8 million rand as he obliterates opposition by 7 clear shots.
Celtic looking for a winner. It's come off the top of the crossbar.
Second place SuperSport United escaped with a point from Bloemfontein after being held to a goalless draw by Celtic.
Space for Cook. It's coming into range, Steve Cook. Oh, and it's Ake. Oh, my goodness. Well, Bournemouth have iced the cake there
In the English Premier League, Liverpool suffer a spectacular meltdown as they concede 3 goals in 14 astonishing minutes to lose 4-3 to mid-table Bournemouth. All this and more I've got for you later on in more detail at 10:40. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this morning, President Jacob Zuma has appealed to religious leaders to pray for unity in the country. Now, he made the call at a service held by the 12 Apostle Church in Christ in Durban.
A warm welcome at the church's annual Thanksgiving ceremony and support from religious leaders. This in the wake of the recent ANC-NEC meeting where some ministers reportedly asked President Zuma to step down. The message from church leaders here is clear. Leaders must be given the space to lead and learn from their mistakes, as this will help to unite the people. The church says President Zuma must be allowed to finish his term.
Everyone you hate has to be unseated in this government. Who will be in an office? You know, if you respect the people of South Africa, respect the way they voted.
The president said religious leaders must stop meddling in political battles.
Kungasiphathi kahle hle uma sibona abezenkolo ikakhulu abahamba phambili sekuyibo asebenza izinkulumo ezingabonisi ukuthi bayasishumayeza basenza ukuthi senze okuhle kodwa nabe bese bebamba iqhaza kulokhu okumbango wezepolitiki ebese siyathula ke nje ngoba phela singobani silendele ukuhola.
It doesn't feel good to us when we see the church leaders, instead of bringing the communities and the politicians together, but they are there at the front and creating problems and being involved in politics.
Zuma also called for respect of the Constitution, saying it's a tool to improve the lives of people. Simphiwe Makanya, SABC News, Durban.
Veterans of the African National Congress in Cape Town area say that leaders must reflect on whether they are following in the footsteps of the former President Nelson Mandela. Party members gathered in Athlone last night to remember Madiba on the 3rd anniversary of his death. The country's first democratic president died on this day 3 years ago at the age of 95. ANC members say that Mandela remains the country's moral compass. They say he was known worldwide for his enduring and compassionate spirit. Commemorations to keep Madiba's legacy alive are taking place across the country.
One can talk for hours about Comrade Nelson Mandela. And you know, there were things about him that I admired. He was modest. He wasn't flashy. There were no stories of big parties and dancing girls and wasting money. And this was a sober person who had a joy for life. These are characteristics of a man, a person, a leader who is so part of everything he's lived that he doesn't have to be flashy to see him.
Very important days, especially in the sense that it reminds one of an icon of our struggle, the father of South African liberation, so to speak. This is a day that brings back fond memories of a people committed to fight for liberation, to create a better world.
Now, today marks 3 years since the death of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. People from his home village of Qunu, outside Mthatha in the Eastern Cape, are still trying to come to terms with the loss of their most famous neighbour. Madiba held Qunu closest to his heart and made it clear that he wished to be buried there.
Still as picturesque as ever, Qunu, one of the most famous rural villages in the world, the last resting place of the man widely regarded as the father of democratic South Africa. Life here is laid back, exuding a serene mood that is perhaps telling of a village still feeling a deep sense of loss 3 years after Madiba's passing.
Life is not so good as since Mandela has passed away. The life is not the same.
The villagers fear that Onu is losing some of its gloss since Madiba's passing. Tourist numbers at the Nelson Mandela Museum in Onu are dwindling.
Now that the Punga building is reopened, then this site then it's back to its initial purpose, that is the youth programming. That's where we hold our youth camps. However, the only thing that is closed, on this site is revenue generation.
But renovating the revenue generating site is on the cards, due to be done within the next 3 years. The museum in Onu has some unique features making it special.
There's a big story, which is much more interesting to everyone, which is attached to the site. That includes Nelson Mandela's original primary school, where he was named Nelson on his first day of school.
3 years ago, the world figuratively descended on Onu as Nelson Mandela was buried. It was probably the busiest this village will ever be. The village of Onu may well never experience a buzz like it did in December 2013 ever again, but it remains central to the remarkable, odds-defying and inspirational story of Dr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. It's also sure to remain a place of great significance as the former statesman lies buried here in this village. Tourists, locals and international will still come to pay respect, and villagers will take comfort in knowing that their hero will forever be home among them. Unati Bingwase, SABC News, Onu, Eastern Cape.
Now, 3 years down the line after the passing of the former statesman, residents of his birthplace continue to celebrate his good deeds. Now, this is a reminder and a lesson to other South Africans to emulate this world-renowned icon. We now cross to our reporter, Zumkita Mqinana, who will join us from the Kunu rural home of the former president where he was buried, and this family have gathered to lay wreaths in his memory. Now, Zumkita, a very good morning to you. It is 3 years after the passing of Madiba. What is happening there this morning?
A very good morning and a warm welcome to the Eastern Cape, Elvis. Well, a lot of activities are set to take place today. Even they started yesterday with the Heroes Marathon, a 42-kilometer race, a 10-kilometer race, and a 5-kilometer fun run. A lot of people, first-time runners, joined the race in honor of Dr. Nelson Mandela. The Bunga building at the Nelson Mandela Museum in town is also scheduled to have an event which will be led by the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Phumulo Masualle, where they will be lighting 95 candles in honor of the spirit and the life and times of Dr. Nelson Mandela. Also scheduled to take place is the release of 27 doves as a symbol of peace, Elvis. Everyone in South Africa is encouraged to be glued to their screens so that they can witness the events that will be taking place here at Onu. The family also has their own program because they are saying that it is important as the family to also do something as the family to ensure that they keep the spirit of their grandfather and their great-grandfather. But now to talk to us about what the family is doing is Chief Swelivelile Mandla Mandela. Good morning and welcome to Newsroom. Just tell us, my chief, what is it that the family is doing in honor of Utata 3 years down the line?
Good morning to you too and the viewers. For us as a family, this is a very intimate moment. We today woke up and visited the graves where Madiba remains lay, and we placed some flowers there and cleaned up around the graves in his memory, and also to take stock where we've come as a family, Madiba's experiences and what he's shared with us has been life-learning moments, and we've gained a lot from that. But I think a lot that we can draw from him is his passion about South Africa. He was a very patriotic leader, always put South Africa first. He was dedicated to serving our people. He committed 67 years of his life serving humanity, and also ensured that he leaned on the international solidarity campaign you would have seen that through the struggle for liberation, he looked to leaders like Yasser Arafat, Muammar Gaddafi, as well as the late Commandant Fidel Castro. And for us as young people in the family today, we look to that and we say, you know, we need to turn the clock back and begin ourselves as South Africans to be patriotic, put South Africa first, ensure that we become dedicated in serving our people and serving humanity. But also we need to reaffirm our position as South Africa in the international sector and ensure that we participate in global peace and ensure that South African citizens are part of the global movement in ensuring that we advocate for global peace.
Right. On that note of you as the family reaffirming your dedication to South Africans, what programs do you have as the children of Utata Nelson Mandela? Because when we see you, we see him, and we expect sometimes that you as the family and other family members will be doing some of the things that he liked. What programs do you have?
Well, we run a yearly program of numerous events coming up on Wednesday at the Mandela School of Science and Technology, which we built with Siemens. We will be having a closing ceremony, a prize-giving ceremony for the students. We are awarding the top 5 students bursaries. There is one international bursary to a university in Germany. There is also 4 other bursaries for university entrance. But we are also looking at TVT colleges for students to begin to go train in their artisans. But also being December, you know, Madiba inspired us, particularly as a family, to be fond of children's Christmas party. So we are starting to prepare for that. We're hosting about 3,500 to about 4,000 kids this year in his birthplace in Mvezo, where we'll be having a Christmas party for the kids. So we have our hands full in trying to prepare for that.
Thank you very much for your time. Well, Elvis, how I wish you and I were children so that we can be able to attend the Christmas party and get some goodies as well. Well, a lot of activities are going to take place in honor of Tata Nelson Mandela. But the message that is being sent to all South Africans this year is that unity and peace must live on so that we ensure that we continue to step in the footsteps of Tata Nelson Mandela. It's back to you in Johannesburg.
Thank you. That's our SABC reporter, Mkita Mkanana in the Eastern Cape. Now, of course, we're asking you that very important question today. It's going to be on your screen right now. We'd like to find out from you your most memorable quote from Madiba. I'd like to find out from you. Of course, you can let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. But there's already some comments, Eben.
Yes, Elvis, there's some tweets. Let's take a look at some of those live tweets that you guys are sending in to us. Of course, we've been asking you to send us, well, your favorite tweet, your favorite Madiba quotes. They're coming in thick and fast. This one from Unati. He says, I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. And I think we all know how that one ends. Nice one there, Unati. This one from Shafana Zule Show. It says, long walk to freedom. That's a quote. Yep. That's a book. Koketso, he says, it always seems impossible until it's done. Yeah, that's a cool one. I like that one a lot. Temba Matlango says, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Nelson Mandela. Well, we've got Professor Chris Landsberg is with us here in studio to talk exactly about education. He's here already. He's good to go. But before we get to Professor Landsberg, let's go back for a little bit more news on Fidel Castro's funeral with Elvis.
As well, while we commemorate here in South Africa the death of Madiba 3 years ago, a week-long national mourning for Fidel Castro in Cuba has come to an end, with his ashes laid to rest in a private ceremony in the city of Santiago. In Havana, the military fired a 21-gun salute to mark the moment.
Santiago de Cuba, birthplace of the Cuban Revolution. It is here where its leader was laid to rest during a private ceremony. On its 1,000-kilometer journey from the capital Havana, Cubans flooded plazas and lined streets to pay their last respects to El Comandante. His remains will be entombed next to independence hero José Martí. Castro claimed Martí's mantle upon overthrowing a US-backed regime in 1959, but Cuba will ban naming any monuments or roads after Castro at his request.
The revolution was consistent with that view, insisting that when he dies, his name and image would never be utilized to designate institutions, plazas, parks, avenues, streets, and other sites.
We are Fidel. Santiago is Fidel. Socialism is Fidel.
Fidel Castro led Cuba for 49 years before his death on November 25th at the age of 90. His death came exactly a decade after he ceded power to his brother Raúl Castro due to an intestinal ailment.
Speaking at the African National Congress memorial ceremony for Castro at the Johannesburg City Hall last week, the AU chairperson, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, said that the former Cuban leader played a monumental role in fighting for freedom across the world and should therefore never be forgotten.
The Cubans contributed not by speeches but by their blood to our liberation and to the liberation of many other countries in Africa. In fact, the canvas of our liberation is heavily woven together by the portraits of President Fidel Castro. You can see many portraits of him standing with young Agostinho Neto, discussing what to do about the defeat of Portuguese. You can see him with smiling Kwame Nkrumah. You can see him with attentive Julius Nyerere. You can see him with resilient Samora Machel. You can see him with pensive Oliver Tambo. You can see him with welcoming Nelson Mandela. You can see him with many of our liberators in our continent and elsewhere. Of course, as South Africa, and I'm sure the Secretary General will dwell on this, but we cannot forget that we are here in a democratic South Africa, in large measure because of the contribution of the Cubans, especially their contribution in training our people, but also in that decisive victory of Quito Cuernavaca. We are here to celebrate a comrade, a revolutionary who did not expect anything in return, but was happy when he could see people being free.
Paying his tribute to Castro, the EFF leader Julius Malema said that his party was the only organization that could legitimately claim the legacy of the July 26th, the movement led by Castro, his brother Raúl, and Che Guevara.
We want to be like Fidel, and we want to be like Cuba because we want South Africa without poverty. We want South Africa with free education. We want quality primary health care which is free. We want the jobs for our people. We want the economy to be controlled by the people and not the white minorities. We must ensure that we celebrate the life of this fearless fighter of a socialist revolution. We must fight for the total emancipation of our people. So some of you who are scared and who think that you can only do these things when you are older, you must think again. Because Fidel Castro started the struggle when he was 19. at the University of Havana. 19 years. He took on the government of the day.
Well, yes, of course, Elvis. Missed you there. Sorry about that. Of course, well, we ran all of it it's a day to remember Fidel Castro and Nelson Mandela, of course. If lots of content to it, but we're also running a poll with some of the comments made by the president yesterday. Let's have a look at the poll. This is not this. The poll. Can we have the poll up? Thank you very much. Now, is there a place for religion in politics? Some people laughed when we put this question up. We've got 118 votes in already. And people say the slim majority, 53%, saying, no, there's no place for religion in politics. Well, the bad news, folks, unfortunately, in South Africa, religion in politics is kind of intertwined. You can't have one without the other one. That's how it is. But the majority of you believe there's no place for religion in politics. Interesting. At SABC Newsroom, keep on tweeting us. We'll put some of your comments on that very question up a little bit later. Now, let's take a look at what you guys are saying with regards to that. Unati says, the two, I would be lying if they go together. You can't mix petrol with water. That's disaster. Well, we have disasters every day. Hectorius Tsanwani says, Newsroom, no. Religion and politics must not mix. They don't make a good couple. Siwapiwe says, no, religion and politics together, no. It doesn't make sense. Keep it coming. At SABC Newsroom, the president, of course, asked religious leaders to behave themselves and not cause trouble, as it were, in the political space. Now, let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from Dr. Jitendra Awad, and it's captioned, humble homage. Okay, let me get into the picture here. Humble homage to a great South African revolutionary icon of democracy and social justice. Hashtag Nelson Mandela. Thank you very much. Of course, Madiba was as well. Passed away on this day 3 years ago now. Who can ever forget that? Let's take a look at our comment of the day. There we go. It's at Nelson Mandela, and it says, 3 principles of Madiba lived his life by. Free yourself, free others, and serve every single day. Absolutely. Now, let's just take a quick look at what's in the courts here in South Africa. We'll start in Johannesburg, where Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir is expected to appear in the Kempton Park Magistrates Court for his extradition hearing. The businessman, who's facing a multitude of criminal cases, has been the subject of an extradition bid for the past several years after it was launched by his home country, the Czech Republic. Then still here in Joburg, Edmond Lovu, Thabo Nkala and Umduduzi Lawrence Matibela are expected to appear in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge for allegedly attacking 2 couples in Rhodes Park. They face 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of rape, as well as robbery. Then in the Limpopo province, a rape and corruption case against a prominent ANC leader in Limpopo will continue in the Mokopane Magistrates Court. The party's regional secretary in the Waterberg, Tali Mashamaite, is expected to appear before the Mokopane Regional Court for allegedly raping a 22-year-old woman. Mashamaite was granted bail of 1,000 rand 2 months ago. The ANC's provincial leadership gave Mashamaite leave of absence until this case is finalised. We'll keep you updated how it goes in front of the courts today. A little bit later on this very channel, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Prof. Landsberg is going to tell us how do we go into the future in tertiary education here in South Africa. Don't go away.
This is SABC News Prime Time, live from Johannesburg. Police have made a massive drugs bust in Khayelitsha on Cape Flat. They seized Mandrax tablets worth 26 million rand. The 529,000 Mandrax tablets seized were hidden in an underground storage facility. A scavenging insect, which has destroyed tomato fields abroad, has been spotted locally. Several organizations are working together to fend off this potential catastrophe. In 2008, it jumped the Mediterranean from Spain and caused havoc in 15 African countries.
Welcome back, everybody. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, 2016 has been a challenging year for universities across South Africa as students march for free education for all. However, these marches soon turned violent and academic programs were disrupted and buildings, including a law library and a residence, were set alight. Also, a student died and several others were injured. These disturbances caused great concern for the academic program and the rankings of the country's universities. But as next year now fast approaches, university officials from South Africa and the BRICS nations, yes, the BRICS nations, are gathered to find a clear way forward and how better we can work to improve the tertiary education sector as a whole here in South Africa. Now, we are fortunate in studio today we have the University of Johannesburg's Professor Chris Landsberg with us. A very good morning to you, Prof.
Thanks for having me. Long time.
We apologize firstly for making you watch all the programming around Fidel Castro and Nelson Mandela. But you're the right person. Actually, before we start the interview on universities, make the link there for those of us that are not in the know.
It was interesting when you guys did the tweets earlier. So one of the tweets aptly used one of Madiba's favorite quotes, according to the person, the one about education as the ultimate liberator. So for Madiba, education ranked very high on the apex of his priorities. I think for me, what I think South Africa should really learn about Cuba is here's the small island nation surrounded, of course, by Big Brother. And the two greatest achievements for Fidel Castro, I believe, particularly as we in South Africa are seeking to become a so-called developmental state, is you have to prioritize primary health care and education. No state has ever developed without getting those two fundamentals in place.
But they got it right so quickly, Prof. What did they do differently from us that they got it right so quickly? They got, especially the education side of it, almost in a decade they got it right.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was a state that was in charge. In China, whatever you want to say about Chinese, there is a state that is in charge. Let's go to free market capitalist America. There is a state that prioritizes this. And what I sometimes wonder, the extent to which in the South African case we are verbally committed to things, but don't really understand the priority and the essence of implementation and following through.
So, Prof, you're saying democracy has become a stumbling block to development?
No, I'm not saying that at all. You know what one of the famous professor Samuel Huntington said about democracy? Democracy is the messiest political system in the world, except for everything else.
Except for everything else, that is true.
So, but it's extremely messy. No, I'm not saying that. And I think what's so key about your points, and I know we're going to get to the summit that UJ held the other day, the BRICS summit. So the theme was reimagining the world-class university. And I tell you what's the central theme that I walked away with from the summit is there can be no university without engagement. So even in democratic South Africa, it's about the state having to engage universities, universities having to engage the state, and know who your key stakeholders are.
Now, Elvis would like to just throw something in the mix there.
Now, Professor, if you look at Cuba, very poor nation, but education, as you said, is a priority. Medicine and medical students are a priority for that country. They even provide us with doctors. But how did they get it right? And we can't, 20 years into democracy.
Yeah. Look, I think we suffer from planitis. We plan and we plan and we replan. And every 5 years, Elvis, it's almost like, let's take primary education, for example. It's almost like we change the curriculum every 5 years. Every time there's a change in personnel in government, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that the matriculants of this year will write a different syllabus to that. Here's a country that took planning exceptionally seriously, but it's also a country that took a long-haul view of things. So I want to tell you what we learned from policy science, Elvis. It takes 28 years on average for any program, any redesign that you put in the public domain to reach maturity. So if you're going to change things every 5 years, it's almost like every 5 years, you start from scratch. So you just can't get to things sorting itself. And I think as South Africa, we must take a very hard look at getting away from this obsession with replanning and redesign and learn to use the phrase again, learn to follow through, particularly in education.
My grandmother always used to say, never reinvent the wheel, because we're also talking about free education that they have, which we don't.
Absolutely.
But you'll talk about that.
Let's reflect on that. We actually came here to do a bit of business with you this morning while we got distracted. So let's have this conversation. Before we can start about the BRICS summit and what came out of that, just give us your overview. This year past and then the outlook for next year.
So, I mean, I try not to be a pessimist in life. And if I do sound pessimistic, at least I hope the delivery won't come across as me being deliberately pessimistic. I think it's been a challenging year, to put it mildly, for universities, 2016, building on 2015. But I'm afraid to say to you, if we think that the storm is over, this is the calm after the storm before the next raging storm. But I can tell you now already, Elvis, I think university managers and executives and constituencies should plan themselves for an abrasive start to 2017. I know that the students are planning, for example, to disrupt registration and the like. And here you have matriculants waiting to start a few years. So I don't think it's going to be a good year in 2017 as well.
Prof, you guys at UJ, you've come up with a unique kind of solution in a way. 100 million rand, you've managed to source that. Tell us about that and how this process, how much time does this buy you within the context of what you've just been talking about?
Look, I mean, I think our Vice-Chancellor is on record saying, and it reminds us every day, for 70 days now, without fail, 70 days, imagine, without any interruption except weekends, he meets with his academic leadership team and the senior leadership team, and they plan. I just think there's been a long-term view at UJ, but I can tell you now, Eben, that not even a place like UJ, who apparently has some resources, can be smug. Because here's the problem, just to link it to your previous question about 2017. I can tell you now, Eben, that the dilemma that most of the 26 universities in the country face is that the monies paid by government in terms of subsidies only comes through by Easter, just after Easter. Now, they had to dip into resources this year to stave off the crisis that will be needed at the beginning of next year. I can tell you now, there are universities in the country that for the first quarter of the year are not sure whether they'll be able to pay salaries, whether they'll be able to maintain and open their gates. So I just think that there's been a bit of prudent management on the part of the university, but the university is absolutely adamant not to be arrogant, because it can happen to any university. Remember the auditorium torching of UJ?
Yeah, absolutely.
100 million rand setback.
Yeah, well, no, we saw that. We were actually shocked on the day. At UKZN, for instance, the most transformed university, they burnt the law library, which kind of blew our heads off. But let's talk about the BRICS Summit for universities quickly. At times in South Africa, we can be very insular and we can look at our problems in isolation and make them bigger than what they are.
Sure.
Within that sort of context, the rest of the world, are they also battling with the concept of free tertiary education?
No, absolutely. Not only do they battle with the challenge of fee-free education, to what extent should the state pay? How much should students pay? Is it the 80-20 model? Is it the 50-50 model? Is it totally free? Is it paid education? So let me tell you about the summit and in terms of the question. The summit, very importantly, was hosted in partnership with Times Higher Education. They are the people, together with Elsevier in Holland, they are the people that determine rankings. And let me be very frank about rankings. It is westernized and it's dominated by Western powers. So UJ, dealing with our local challenges at home, saying we're not going to be parochial and insular, we're also going to help to shape the debate, because we don't think there's a fair reflection.
Absolutely.
It's called the Harvardization, by the way.
I thought education was going to be decolonized.
Exactly.
Isn't that the point of this whole protest?
And I tell you what's so apt about your question. Every university is also dealing with its variation or variant of decolonization. So I had the privilege during the summit of chairing the students panel. You know, so for some reason they think that I can deal with these feisty, young people who found their voice, quite frankly. I think that's the lesson for us from the students. They're no longer scared to put their issues on the table. It's interesting, we had representatives from all BRICS countries. The Chinese and the Russians felt there's too much local in their education, not enough international. Brazil and South Africa feel there's too much foreign, hence the need for decolonize and to bring more of the local African dimension in our case and the local South American context in Brazil. So your point, we're all grappling with the same thing in different variations.
You mentioned Brazil. Now, Brazil is the one that stands out for me because we know the struggles they've had within the politics and the economics of that country. They managed to have free education, tertiary education, that is. What are they doing right that we're not thinking about? No, it's really not that we're not thinking about it. It's that we face this dire situation, Elvis and Eben, in a country of a population of 55 million. You have a tax base of 8 million people. So as much as the ANC-led government would like to make the pronouncement tomorrow that there would be free education, they know it will simply set in motion forces that they can't control. So it's not that we don't want to do it. The question is whether we can afford to do it in South Africa.
The BRICS summit as such, is there then a sense that universities in South Africa and all the other BRICS countries will work together in order to come up with a solution?
You ask the question whether they will work together. Frankly, they don't have a choice. You cannot, in this day and age, whether it's the tertiary sector of education, the primary sector, whether it's the economy, whether it's any social strata, you can no longer work in isolation. No country, similarly no university, is an island. If we want to become more relevant abroad, if we want to become more relevant at home in addressing our challenges, we're going to have to learn to forge the partnerships. But let me qualify. There's no point you becoming more internationalist in your outlook as a university, yet you are disengaged from your immediate surroundings. So let's take University of Johannesburg. From the Auckland Park, Melville, Brixton, Soweto areas. What are the peculiarities that we face in our region? So here's the interesting thing, because you are very interested in the recommendations, Elvis. One of the recommendations, the future world-class university will no longer just be measured in terms of education outputs and throughputs, how many students you graduate and how successfully, so-called world-class research outputs, but the extent to which you are engaged in your immediate community and help to find solutions, as well as being engaged abroad.
Now that sounds fantastic and interesting, because that is what you need in order to cultivate that sense of ownership within the communities as well.
Absolutely, and I tell you what, for me, is the tragedy about, you see, you know, of course, who the keynote speaker was during our summit. Nobel laureate, Nigerian Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka. He had a riveting speech about anti-humanism. He argues that instead of universities being in the forefront all over the world, to take Eben's point, all over the world, the Americas, the United States of America, China, India, Africa, ourselves, instead of us becoming the places that find solutions to complex problems, we're actually becoming anti-humanist in that we're becoming the places where the venom is spat about intolerance, using religion for the wrong purpose. Isn't it interesting? One of your stories this morning was the debate yesterday, almost the tension between the head of state going again to Durban, incidentally, to KwaZulu-Natal, to go and read the riot act to the churches, and should the churches be out? Well, universities are becoming the places where these things are actually encourage, the intolerance, the anti-humanism. As opposed to finding solutions for humanity, we seem to be adding to the problems.
Well, let's put that poll up, actually, Prof. Are you surprised with the numbers? Is there a place for religion in politics, is what we asked on that question. 53% of South Africans right now say no, there's no place for religion in politics. Not in South Africa. The two are kind of intertwined a little bit.
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised. To answer your question directly, I'm not surprised, because here's the thing. We are a Christian-dominated society in terms of religion, even though we are pluralist in terms of how many religions we have. And then to use the academic phrase, we're also a secular state.
Yeah.
A state where the church is, the state is run not by the churches and by religion, but there is freedom of religion. So I'm certainly not surprised, because you see the dominance of Christian people who feel it's not their place, but then you have a very active civil society, I suppose made up of the other 47% that expresses their view. It's a complex country, this, isn't it?
It is.
But
it's a wonderful
but
country.
a very exciting one.
Yes, and we need to keep the positive outlook. And thank you for being so positive and coming in today, Prof. Great to have you with us. We could keep you here for 3 hours.
Yesterday, eh?
Yes, it is. You never walk alone, they say.
Yeah, but the meltdown was incredible.
I'm just happy.
I know that we need to wrap up, but Prof, just one other recommendation that came out of that, which is crucial for 2017.
Here's it. There is a revolution that I'm stuck in the 20th century. I'm so illiterate when it comes to IT. To what extent do universities understand the 21st century student, and to what extent are we going to learn to teach by embracing the IT revolution, including moving away from laptops and starting to use telephone devices as a powerful tool? You see, the challenges are enormous. How adept is the university to face up 21st century challenges? Or are we stuck in the past?
The fourth industrial revolution, as they call it. It's right here. Elvis, thank you very much. Thanks, Prof. We've got to move on, of course. Of course, we've been asking you to give us Professor Chris Landsberg, by the way, before I forget to give him his place in the sun, as it were, here next to him. Great to have you with us on a Monday morning. Fantastic.
Only a title, eh?
Thank you, yes. Or I say lead without it. That's what you do, Prof. Anyhow, our question of the day to you has been around Madiba. Of course, we remember Madiba quite fondly today. So what's your favorite Madiba quote? We've got a lot coming in, lots of different ones. Let's have a look at some of the better ones that we've put up. Sipo, he says, "Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all." Hashtag Mandela. This one from Mohale Mopai says, "We don't care if the cat is black or white, as long as it can catch mice." I like that a lot. This one from Tema Matlangu, he says, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Nelson Mandela said that. You heard that from Professor Landsberg. He shared that with us also. This one from Kaya, he says, "Love comes more naturally to the human heart, than hate." Nelson Mandela, it is, after all, the day that we remember our very own icon. Now, let's take a look at what you can see on our Facebook page right now. Veterans of the ANC, that's the African National Congress in Cape Town, say leaders must reflect on whether they are following in the footsteps of the late former President Nelson Mandela, failing to improve the lives of girls and women trapped in poverty and domestic drudgery in northeast Nigeria could drive them into the ranks of extremist groups. This is the latest from analysts in the region. Then, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi announced his resignation. A shocking one it is, hours after learning he'd suffered a crushing defeat in a referendum on constitutional reform. Yes, we have another Brexit on the way. It seems Italy has had enough. The Italians look like they want to join the British and leave the European Union, and that could set a house of cards into effect. Anyhow, you can get all of that on our Facebook page or on our website, sabc.co.za/news. Let's take a quick roundup now from the front pages around the globe. We'll start in Europe, where the Times reports that Italian voters plunged Europe into turmoil last night after Matteo Renzi, the Prime Minister, lost his do-or-die referendum on constitutional reform and he resigned. Will they leave Europe is the question now. Then in Australia, the Australian says the Turnbull government is ramping up efforts to claw back $4 billion believed to have been incorrectly paid to welfare recipients, issuing debt notices worth $4.5 million every day in a bid to rein in the ballooning welfare bill. Good luck to them. Finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that the coalition disputes over the settlement bill and the future of the Amona outpost could be coming to a close as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continued negotiations with party leaders and brought options to the Attorney General. That might lead to the postponement of a vote later today. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have a look at our sports focus, and it can only be the Blitzboks who've brought a little bit of a smile after a miserable sporting year for our rugby followers here in South Africa after a short break.
Where is your
Give me that paperwork.
Where is your paperwork?
Like I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I'm locked up.
This is not fair. Senta Twasezan. Not fair.
Uku putse rent ka 200. Have to put like 200. Uri ngwana, we won. 150, 150 plus. Koloi, Leon. Let me in another one, 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes,
I
that's
the
one to
keys.
lock me then out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No. No.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. It's a Monday morning. Of course, we live with the news that the Blitzbokke were in sublime form over the weekend as they steamrolled the best in the world of Sevens Rugby to take the opening tournament in Dubai. Yep. Yes, South Africa and Sanitary they were in sublime form. Kendall is here. He's been watching. Made us happy after it's been a miserable rugby year, hasn't it?
I like what you said just before the break, where you actually could juxtapose these guys' performance against the bigger picture of what we as South African rugby fans have been experiencing.
Yeah.
Phenomenal performance by these men who literally, they beat New Zealand 40-0. 40-0, they beat the All Blacks.
No one has ever beaten New Zealand 40-0 in anything.
No, never.
I think it was one of the greatest performances by a Springbok side in the history of rugby to beat New Zealand 14-0 in the quarterfinals here in Dubai.
100%, and this was all on their way to steamrolling Fiji as well. We all know how good Fiji are. We can see that they just sized through our defense on their way to that particular try, but it was not going to be enough because the Blitzbokke had a different plan in mind, and they were going to take the Dubai Sevens, beating the defending champions of Dubai.
This guy was player of the tournament, Chris Dry. He had a great weekend. He's really coming into his own. And I think the thing that people don't realize is, yes, this team, they've got the skills and they've got the pace and all of that, but they're also the most experienced Sevens team on the circuit right now.
Yes, you did say that. Yeah, it's like the Chris Dry's or the Cecil Africans.
The Carl Brown, Cecil Africa, Branko de Pree. You can go down the list, Sinatla. These are guys who have played the most Sevens rugby on the circuit of any team. And Sinatla, this guy in picture, I think he should play for the Boks in the 15-man code. They should just move him straight through the ranks. But he's coming to play Super Rugby, actually, for 100%. The Stormers. So it should be interesting to see if he makes it into
rugby. In fact, this entire team plays very intelligent rugby. The way they stood off the tackles, the way they knew when to go into the breakdown, when to contest and where to position themselves was superb. And the result of it all, and the conditioning, even, I think we need to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people are talking about is the fitness levels of this team. And I know that's the thing that I missed in the 15-man game.
Yeah.
You know, when we were getting pumped in the Northern Hemisphere, the thing that stood out for me is that even though we were behind, our guys were still jogging. They were still jogging back to rucks and so forth. And that shows a lack of desire and a lack of fitness.
100%. You're not going to be in position. You can dream it. You can't actually affect it on the field of play if you're not fit enough to do it.
Yeah, that's our 5 cents. The Peanut Gallery, myself and Kendall Mahamati giving you our bit at about 10 to 10 every morning. We've got a sports focus where we get to live out our own personal little fantasy. Anyhow, Sanitary is here to give us the weather.
Welcome from the weather desk. It is expected to be another hot day, especially for the Northern Cape province as well as over the Western Cape. Temperatures along those parts will go as high as 40 degrees in some towns such as Van Rensdorp and maybe even into the Springbok regions over the Northern Cape province. In terms of rainfall, we're seeing some of it just towards the southeastern parts of South Africa. Windy conditions are also expected along the coast, so winds will go as fast as around 40 kilometers an hour. For all those that are traveling towards Madagascar, or if you live in Madagascar, that's what you should expect. Rain along the west coast and also towards the northern parts. Partly cloudy skies for the rest of South Africa, especially the northeastern regions, with Pretoria reaching a maximum of 33, Johannesburg 29, Polokwane also 29, and cooler weather for Komani as well as Qunu in the Eastern Cape province. Sutherland is at 31 degrees, 31 towards Cape Town, and 40, as I mentioned, to 41 towards Uppington, as it is expected to remain quite hot along those paths. Take a look at Windhoek, 33, and also closer towards Botswana. Temperatures are also starting to increase quite a bit there. 39 for Gaborone. And for all those that are going to be in towards Bulawayo. Expect a bit of sunshine there, but later into the afternoon, rainy weather will be coming your way along those paths. Harare is at 31, and also widespread showers for Majanga, Antananarivo, and over Fianarantsoa. Those partly cloudy skies now definitely over the central parts of Africa. Basically, heavy rainfall is expected in some parts, with possibilities of those heavy rainfall expected along the central parts and all the way towards Brazzaville. Libreville might be a little bit clear conditions along those parts, and hopefully it transforms into a bit of rain towards Kampala and over Nairobi. Kigali is at 23, 37 towards Juba, and for all those that are traveling towards Addis Ababa, do expect sunny skies, a fine day there, temperatures into the lower 20s, very lovely days expected in the Ethiopian capital. Over the western side, rainy conditions as usual towards Yaoundé as well as over Libreville, and some clear conditions now for North Africa. Dry weather as usual, no rainfall, just sunny conditions there, hot conditions. But now, because it is basically winter along the northern parts, you'll see a bit of moisture towards Tehran as well as over Baghdad, and definitely over the Middle East you should expect some sunny conditions with temperatures dropping a bit. Mecca 32, 28 for Riyadh, still very warm, but compared to what the usual summer temperatures are, it is expected to be much cooler. So as at 19, 23 for Tripoli, and you see all along North African regions it is expected to be clear. Not much rainfall is expected. Even West Africa is changing quite a bit now. Not much rainfall towards Lagos and over Abuja, but Abidjan should expect rain. Kumasi in Ghana is also going to be quite dry, and along the Volta Lake, along those parts, do expect some fog patches and possibilities of clouds coming in later into the afternoon. Miami is at 37, and basically hot weather for N'Djamena as they go very close to 40 degrees for the day. That's just about it for the weather, but do stay tuned, there'll be more later on.
Let's say it's ago, I just wanted to ask him about the curse of Man United. It's now 5, 6, 7 draws. The biggest Man United supporter, Tsietse Munale.
Yeah, on cup competitions only. Yeah, league games, I stand back.
Is there a curse?
There must be.
It's witchcraft.
They need to slaughter a black goat. Yeah, just like the other team here in South Africa. They need to do something. I'm not going to name names, eh?
It's been a tough weekend on the sporting front. Tsietse can't buy a win at the moment. Just drawing. But no matter what,
the goals
Liverpool still were beaten, so it makes the Monday worthwhile, isn't it?
You know, Liverpool, I don't understand what's going on with that team either. You know, it's
they
like
always win the title in November and they slip up in May. We'll be back at the top of the hour with a complete update. See you then.
Yeah, the Klopp and the Cop are not doing so well. Yeah?
Not at all, my friend.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Hypertension is the condition where the blood pressure, the pressure in the blood vessels, it goes up.
We often come out at the top of the ladder having the worst numbers. And I think that's because we almost have what I can call a perfect storm of high blood pressure risk factors.
If you are diagnosed with hypertension, you just have to continue taking the medication for the rest of the life.
Because we try and reintegrate them and we try and retrain their abilities to be part of social society.
We do a lot of work trying to educate people, trying to encourage and motivate people to lead a healthy lifestyle. So what a healthy lifestyle means from a blood pressure point of view is obviously the more active you are, and the better your heart is, the more fit your heart is, and the better condition your blood vessels are.
Catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10 with Dr. Sillo Mutawu.
streets and poverty did not deter Mpumi's success.
Being an orphan or coming from poverty or having seen what HIV and AIDS does to a person that you love takes nothing away from you. It means that you are part of a selective few who have had to face a very, very marginalized struggle.
Abuse is a lonely journey that needs compassion.
I came across as a very confident, ambitious person, but behind that mask was somebody who had serious anxiety problems, a person who had knots in their stomach continuously, a person who could be in company and would feel very lonely.
Being away from his birth country did not stop his hunger to succeed.
Boxing was the way out. Turning professional would give me an income. That was the solution to the problems I've had for so many years.
For more inspiring stories, join Bupalong every Friday at 17:30.
Welcome back. A very good morning. If you've just joined us, it's gone 10 o'clock. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News with Rene West, who's just joined us. Myself, I'm Evan Jensen. And, of course, in the naughty corner, as always, you have Kendall Makamate joining us. Well, who will be giving us an update shortly. But, Rene, today we focus on the 3rd anniversary of Madiba's death as the world commemorates the passing of the late former South African president. Now, the anti-apartheid activist hailed as the father of democratic South Africa died 3 years ago on this day at the age of 95. So we ask you the question, what is your favorite Madiba quote? And Rene, let's have a look at some of those nice ones that's come in. And quite a few of them are coming in at the moment, isn't it?
Matuto says, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemies.
Oh, what wonderful. Sipo says, let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all. Sipo, that's almost biblical. Wonderful.
Motlala says, we don't care if the cat is black or white as long as it can catch mice. Sounds like a bit like an African proverb there.
It does.
Nice.
Temba Matlangu says, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. We've had an extensive discussion around exactly that one today.
Kaya says, love comes more naturally to the human heart. Warm in there.
How do you remember Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela? Send us your favorite quote to at SABC Newsroom. We'd love to hear from you. But we're also running a poll today,
yes,
Rene.
We are. Now, President Jacob Zuma says it concerns him that the church leaders are at the forefront of trouble and getting involved in politics when they should rather bring the community and politicians together. So we've been asking, is there a place for religion in politics? And a lot of people are saying no.
The majority, 55% actually saying no. Al-Malachi's tweet on that, he says a big no. Religion, love, peace, respect, unity and Ubuntu. Politics today, hatred, greediness, power over others. Please don't mix, says Malachi.
Gilbert says, maybe Mr. Zuma and the leader of the 12 Apostle Church should come to me and teach them what the Bible says. Oh, interesting.
Victor Gaga says politics impact on people's lives, including religious people. Therefore, it's uncalled for if politicians gag religious leaders, says Victor Gaga.
And Ali Emmanuel says politics work hand in hand with religion because when politics fail, politicians scream to religion for help.
Yeah, interesting one. And the last one, a very funny one actually. Temba Matangu says, no, you can't mix doom and petrol. Doom and petrol, really, Temba? Temba hitting the raw nerves. Of course, we've had issues with doom in the news in South Africa off late. Well, that's where we are right now. Of course, let's go to Rene now to give us the latest news on this Monday morning.
President Jacob Zuma says religious leaders should not get involved in politics and rather focus on bringing the community and politicians together. Today marks the 3rd anniversary of the passing of Mandela, with commemorations taking place nationwide. And Cuba has ended a 9-day national mourning for Fidel Castro after laying his ashes to rest in a private ceremony in the city of Santiago. Before we get to that news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening in the sports on this Monday morning.
No, thank you very much. A very interesting topic we've got today. I mean, there are lots who believe that God is omnipresent, and there's some who choose to deny that. And I'm looking forward to how the rest of the day pans out. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Well done, Brandon Stone. And that's a win which will mean very nearly as much as a South African Open win, his debut win on the European Tour.
South Africa's Brendan Stone wins big at the Alfred Dunhill Championship, walking away with a cool 2.8 million rand as he obliterates opposition by 7 clear shots.
Celtic looking for a winner. It's come off the top of the crossbar.
In second place, SuperSport United escaped with a point from Bloemfontein after being held to a goalless draw by Celtic.
Space for Cook. It's coming into range, Steve Cook. And it's Ake!
Oh my goodness. Well, Bournemouth have iced the cake. There is the cherry on the top.
And in the English Premier League, Liverpool suffer a spectacular meltdown as they concede 3 goals in 14 astonishing minutes to lose 4-3 to mid-table Bournemouth. As you can hear the commentator say, Jurassic classic. Now it's all back to the main desk for Renee, who's got the news. I'll be back with more later on at 10:40.
Thank you very much, Kendall. President Jacob Zuma has appealed to religious leaders to pray for unity in the country. He made the call at a service held by the 12 Apostle Church in Christ in Durban.
A warm welcome at the church's annual Thanksgiving ceremony and support from religious leaders. This in the wake of the recent ANC-NEC meeting where some ministers reportedly asked President Zuma to step down. The message from church leaders here is clear. Leaders must be given the space to lead and learn from their mistakes, as this will help to unite the people. The church says President Zuma must be allowed to finish his term.
Everyone you hate has to be unseated in this government. Who will be in an office? You know, if you respect the people of South Africa, respect the way they voted.
The president said religious leaders must stop meddling in political battles.
Ungasiphathi kahle hle uma sibona abezenkolo ikakhulu abahamba phambili sekuyibo asebenza izinkulumo ezingabonisi ukuthi bayasishumayeza basenza ukuthi senze okuhle kodwa nabo bese bebamba iqhaza kulokhu okumbango wezepolitiki ebese siyathula ke nje ngoba phela singobani silendele ukuhola.
It doesn't feel good to us when we see the church leaders, instead of bringing the communities and the politicians together, but they are there at the front and creating problems and being involved in politics.
Zuma also called for respect of the Constitution, saying it's a tool to improve the lives of people. Simphiwe Makanya, SABC News, Durban.
Veterans of the ANC in the Cape Town area say leaders must reflect on whether they are following in the footsteps of former President Nelson Mandela. Now, party members gathered in Athlone last night to remember Madiba on the 3rd anniversary of his death. The country's first democratic president died on this day 3 years ago at the age of 95. ANC members say Mandela remains the country's moral compass. They say he was known worldwide for his enduring and compassionate spirit. Commemorations to keep Madiba's legacy alive are taking place across the country today.
One can talk for hours about Comrade Nelson Mandela.
And you know, there were things about him that I admired. He was modest. He wasn't flashy. There were no stories of big parties and dancing girls and wasting money. And this was a sober person who had a joyful life. These are characteristics of a man, a person, a leader who is so part of everything he's lived that he doesn't have to be flashy to see him.
Very important days, especially in the sense that it reminds one of an icon of our struggle, the father of South African liberation, so to speak. This is a day that brings back fond memories of a people committed to fight for liberation, to create a better world.
3 years down the line after the passing of the former statesman, resident of the birthplace continued to celebrate his good deeds. This is a reminder and a lesson to other South Africans to emulate this world-renowned icon. SABC reporter Zimkita Manhinana talked to Chief Mandela from Nelson Mandela's rural home, where the family has gathered to lay wreaths.
For us as a family, this is a very intimate moment. Early in the morning, we woke up and visited the graves where Matiba is laid to rest and placed some flowers in his remembrance on all the graves that are there on site. Matiba was first and foremost very patriotic to South Africa and also in serving the nation and humanity at large. He committed 67 years of his life to serving humanity, but also he contributed largely to the international solidarity in that he enjoyed a lot of support from the international community during his struggle years in imprisonment, but also when he was released, he went to visit the likes of Yasser Arafat, Muammar Gaddafi, and with the passing of Commandant Fidel Castro, we as a family are very touched that men and women that paved Matiba's way are passing and leaving a legacy for all humanity to follow. And I think it's for us as a family and South Africans at large to continue in the footsteps of these icons, to remain patriotic, also ensure that we serve our nation and humanity at large.
Moving further afield, a week-long national mourning for Fidel Castro has come to an end in Cuba, with his ashes laid to rest in a private ceremony in the city of Santiago. In Havana, the military fired a 21-gun salute to mark the moment.
Santiago de Cuba, birthplace of the Cuban Revolution. It is here where its leader was laid to rest during a private ceremony. On its 1,000-kilometer journey from the capital Havana, Cubans flooded plazas and lined streets to pay their last respects to El Comandante. His remains will be entombed next to independence hero José Martí. Castro claimed Martí's mantle upon overthrowing a US-backed regime in 1959, but Cuba will ban naming any monuments or roads after Castro at his request.
The revolution was consistent with that view, insisting that when he dies, his name and image would never be utilized to designate institutions, plazas, parks, avenues, streets, and other sites.
We are Fidel. Santiago is Fidel. Socialism is Fidel.
Fidel Castro led Cuba for 49 years before his death on November 25th at the age of 90. His death came exactly a decade after he ceded power to his brother Raúl Castro due to an intestinal ailment.
Speaking at the ANC's memorial service for Castro at the Johannesburg City Hall last week, AU chairperson Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma said the former Cuban leader played a monumental role in fighting for freedom across the world and should therefore never be forgotten.
The Cubans contributed not by speeches, but by their blood to our liberation and to the liberation of many other countries in Africa. In fact, the canvas of our liberation is heavily woven together by the portraits of President Fidel Castro. You can see many portraits of him standing with young Agostinho Neto, discussing what to do about the defeat of Portuguese. You can see him with smiling Kwame Nkrumah. You can see him with attentive Julius Nyerere. You can see him with resilient Samora Machel. You can see him with pensive Oliver Tambo. You can see him with welcoming Nelson Mandela. You can see him with many of our liberators in our continent and elsewhere. Of course, as South Africa, and I'm sure the Secretary General will dwell on this, but we cannot forget that we are here in a democratic South Africa, in large measure because of the contribution of the Cubans, especially their contribution in training our people, but also in that decisive victory of Quito Cuernavaca. We are here to celebrate a comrade, a revolutionary who did not expect anything in return, but was happy when he could see people being free.
In his tribute to Castro, EFF leader Julius Malema said that his party was the only organization that could legitimately claim the legacy of the July 26 movement led by Castro, his brother Raul, and Che Guevara.
We want to be like Fidel, and we want to be like Cuba because we want South Africa without poverty. We want South Africa with free education. We want quality primary health care which is free. We want the jobs for our people. We want the economy to be controlled by the people and not the white minorities. We must ensure that we celebrate the life of this fearless fighter of a socialist revolution. We must fight for the total emancipation of our people. So some of you who are scared and who think that you can only do these things when you are older, you must think again. Because Fidel Castro started the struggle when he was 19 at the University of Havana. 19 years. He took on the government of the day.
Yeah, that's Julius Malema remembering, of course, Fidel Castro was laid to rest in Santiago de Cuba in a private ceremony, late yesterday or early this morning, South African time, if that's how you prefer it. Now, time to continue our discussion on the possible legalization process of marijuana for medical purposes here in South Africa. The plant with many names is considered an illegal drug in most countries still, even though some cultures firmly believe it has medicinal properties. Now, research is suggesting that it does indeed have medical benefits. This discussion was brought to Parliament by the Medical Controls Council and the Department of Health in the form of a bill. Now, following stakeholder comment in January on this matter, ill patients may be able to buy cannabis on script as soon as April of next year, if the plans go ahead. Now, joining us in our studio in Durban is the representatives of Doctors for Life, Dr. Albu van Eerden, and a cannabis expert, Professor Willem Vlok. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Good morning.
If I can start with you, Dr. van Eerden, Just give us the latest developments, where the bill is now. How do you view what is on the table right now and the pronouncements that's been made around medical cannabis, if we can call it that?
Well, actually, we're not in the picture of where it is. We understand that the bill will be made known for public input in January, and we're actually waiting for that. Otherwise, we are only as far as the bill as it was in 2014, and we can only comment on that. Our great concern with all these discussions is that the plant cannabis as a whole is being confused with the individual molecules of cannabinoids, and that people speak in favor of actually medicinal value of cannabinoids, but very often others are using the word cannabis, the whole plant in general, which is a very dangerous confusion. And the whole concept of medical marijuana or medical cannabis does actually not exist, because the whole plant is a very complicated plant, and it is very, very dangerous as a whole, and we feel the public must be protected against that.
Dr. van Eerden, you are Doctors for Life. We've spoken many times over the last couple of years since 2014. You've always been against the legalization of cannabis, both for medicinal and recreational use. I want to ask you, are you looking at international benchmarks when you say the things that you say? Because it's not just a case of what's happening in South Africa. There's an entire move. There are moves afoot all around the world.
Very much so. There's no professional organization in any of the major countries that support legalizing the plant as a whole. I mean, we stopped chewing the bark of a willow tree a few hundred years ago for toothache. We've isolated aspirin from that.
That's a little bit of a stretch to say that cannabis is like chewing tree bark, Doctor. Don't you think that's a little bit disrespectful towards an entire community that believes differently?
Look, I'm speaking according to science and not according to popularity. And I think that's one of the main points we are making. The decision about legalizing cannabis is not something that's made at the ballot, but it's made on solid science, where individual components must be isolated and purified and then studied to protect the public. And in order to protect them from extortion and to protect them from dangerous effects. Let me give you an example. Years ago, we believed that female hormone, estrogen, is protective against heart attacks. And it was promoted until it was properly investigated by science. And we discovered that it actually promotes cardiac diseases. Okay. And so it was changed then after proper investigation. So we are not against the legalization, a proper investigation of individual components, thoroughly, making sure that it's safe, making sure that it's working, and then making it available to the public.
These processes are afoot around the world, though, Doctor. I don't want to dally too long on it, because we've got the expert next to you, who is Professor Willem Vlok, an expert on cannabis. Now, Professor Vlok, just give us your quick overview as to the medicinal benefits, what you see. Last week I had an expert on here from the CDA, that's the Central Drug Authority, who came and he said, cannabis helps with the spread of HIV. What do you say to that?
Okay, just a correction. I'm a physician in private practice that deals with patients with chronic illness. I prescribe drugs all the time, but to be honest, to prescribe a smoked plant is not the way we deliver drugs on a moment, and I have a problem with the way the drug is being distributed. Also, when we are prescribing any medication, it's a molecule that we prescribe that we can own up to its side effects, its risk profile, and the safety of the drug, and that's our real concern.
Yes, I understand that's your real concern, but are you changing the way that you're thinking about medicinal cannabis right now? Are you changing the way you're thinking about this? Because you've always been against this as Doctors for Life.
No, I'm not changing the way that I think about any molecule in particular. What I am supporting is the proper investigation of a molecule and to own up to its whole risk profile, the adverse events that one can expect, and the benefits for the safety of the public.
These trials are happening all around the world, Professor. Are you sure surely there's enough research being done right now, and there's enough research that's been done before this?
No, there's not enough research done at all on the moment. We are supporting the proper research of a drug and to look at the pure chemical compounds for further research. And there are 2 drugs on the market already as a result. And there are many more to be investigated, and we are anxiously awaiting proper research.
Proper research. For the last 3 years, that's all I've been hearing, Prof, from every single expert is proper research, proper research. Let's finish up with Dr. van Eerden. Dr. van Eerden, now that this bill is before Parliament, what would you like to see happen next?
I don't think the existing legislation need to be changed. The Medicinal Act 101 of 1965 is in place to protect the public. And I think if we would like to register any of the components of the 480 molecules in the plant, that is extremely unstable, that varies greatly. The active ingredient varies from 3% originally now to 30%, which has totally different effects. We should just stick to the existing way of registering medicines, going through the proper investigation, isolating a molecule, seeing whether it's working. There are some molecules that have been investigated. In Europe, they've got Sativex, which is a 1-to-1 combination of THC, the active ingredient, psychoactive ingredient, and another cannabidiol. It has been used in some European countries and in Canada, but it's not really growing in popularity. Actually, it's decreasing. The Marinol, which is a synthetic THC, is more promising, and they've compared that to cannabis as a whole plant. It's just strange that in countries, or in the States, in the USA, where it has been legalized, the profile of most people having licenses are not people suffering from cancer or epilepsy, but 90+% are young men with vague complaints of vague pains, non-specific pains.
Dr. van Eerden,
cannabis.
Dr. van Eerden, I have to stop you there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I thank you and Professor Vlok for coming in and taking part today. That is Dr. Albert van Eerden, who's with Doctor for Life, and, of course, Professor Willem Vlok, who has proposed to us as a cannabis expert. He's now a GP that's with Doctors for Life. Just to clear it up, Doctors for Life, they are against any legalization process of cannabis in this country. They believe, as you've just heard from Dr. van Eerden, that the legislation from 1965 is still adequate to deal with what we are dealing with today. Now, after the break, we're going to be talking to the Dagga Party to find out what they think about what the good professor has just told us, but also around the latest legislation. This is Jeremy David Acton. He's the leader of the Dagga Party. He's in Cape Town. We'll be talking to him after a short break.
I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I'm locked up.
This is not fair. Center Basetan. Not fair.
Ku putse rent ka 200. Have se kupula ka 200. O re ngwana o i 150 plus koloi leon le tlamehile in another 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes, you just want to lock them out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. Let's continue with our discussion on the legalization of marijuana for medical purposes. Now, there are several pro-cannabis parties that have taken up this fight in the streets through marches and court cases for quite a few years now here in South Africa. However, these parties have already spotted potential challenges that the public could be faced with if the bill is passed. But this is a step in the right direction, they say. Now, to talk about their position and to give us reaction as to what we were just heard from Doctors for Life in our Sea Point studio in Cape Town is the leader of the Dagga party, Jeremy Acton. Jeremy, very good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Eben. Thanks for having me on your show.
Jeremy, you've just heard Doctors for Life. They say that the legislation of 1965 is still adequate to deal with cannabis today, and there should be no changes. People should just be allowed to get the medicinal benefits of marijuana. What do you say to that?
We absolutely reject that viewpoint. They also said that there's not enough research about the plant. I already feel that they must catch up with modern research. This plant is the most researched plant on Earth, and the interaction of cannabinoids with the human's endocannabinoid system is completely verified. And this plant helps our endocannabinoid system to regulate itself in areas of metabolism, inflammatory response, managing how our brain actually deals with removing old cells. The cancer research has shown that it is definitely helpful against cancer. Now, they also claim that we have to isolate certain cannabinoids from this plant and that the plant as a whole is completely dangerous. We totally reject that because the whole plant, humans evolved for 10,000 years alongside this plant, and this plant was also selected through all those years. And this plant actually works synergistically among its cannabinoids that it offers us to help our body regulate its cannabinoid system. So we don't accept that pharmaceutical companies should be allowed to fiddle with this and extract what they think is correct for other people to use and then make profits out of a plant that should be in every person's garden, which they can then use to medicate with, using best practices which could be disseminated and guidelines which could be given to the people on how to test and use cannabis for medical purposes properly. And I want to also add that all recreational use by adults is medically beneficial and preventative of the ailments that cannabis can treat. So prevention is better than cure, and all adults over the age of, say, 30 should be moderately using cannabis so that it assists them towards their old age.
Jeremy, every time I speak to Doctors for Life, I speak to the Central Drug Authority, even MCC and these, they all come with the same story ever, is that there's, of course, the division between cannabinoids and cannabis, the plant, and the plant is dangerous, but they always ask for more research to be done. Why do you think that is, when there's so much research being done around the world on this plant?
It's because those people front for the big pharmaceutical corporations and want to see a delay in the truth about this plant. As I said, this plant is the most researched plant on Earth. I have hundreds of peer-reviewed studies in my computer which proves that it is medically beneficial for many, many, many ailments, including Alzheimer's, dementia, diabetes 2, cancer, metabolism. So by saying we need more research, they actually want to try and stall this process and to hide the truth about this plant, that it's perfectly usable and safe for human use as a relaxant as well as a medicine. in the form that the Creator gave us. And I consider them to be mendacious. That means they're lying.
Can I ask you just quickly, as the Dagga Party, put on your Dagga Party leader's hat and tell me the Medical Innovations Bill, where it is now and what's your position with regards to it?
As far as we know, we have been following the process of the bill, and we're very pleased to see that at last the Health Department has admitted that there is a medical benefit, or there may be medical benefits in the use of cannabis. However, we really reject the fact that it only mentions cannabinoids and not cannabis itself. And we feel that the Medical Innovations Bill is an agenda to promote a state and big pharmaceutical corporation hijacking of the people's plant and then sell it back to us for corporate profits. And we reject that. The only way that public health will really benefit is for people to be given the right to cultivate it in their own gardens and to produce the oil that can be extracted from the plant under guidelines that can be easily shared with the public. So we really feel that this, Medical Innovations Bill is not in the interests of the plant or the people, and we reject that only licensed growers will be allowed to produce cannabis and licensed manufacturers will produce the medicines, when in fact it should actually be available directly to everyone on a cultivation basis.
Jeremy, I thank you very much for joining us today. That's the leader of the Cannabis Party, or as it's known in South Africa, the Dagga Party. Jeremy David Acton coming to us live from Sea Point in Cape Town, talking about the Medical Innovations Bill and, of course, the legalization of cannabis for medicinal purposes, specifically here in South Africa. Of course, after the President's pronouncements yesterday, we asked you, is there a place for religion in politics? 56% of you right now are agreeing with the President that religious leaders should watch themselves in the political space. 56% out of 138 votes. Yeah, that's a fairly good poll. At SABC Newsroom is where you interact with us. Let's go over to Rene West now for more.
Yes, thank you, Eben. Quite an interesting story here at SABC. Now, our investigative team has traced more families whose loved ones disappeared in the late 80s in the Western Transvaal. Now, reporter Selo Tatai and his cameraman Tumi Khaputwelwe, the initial report detailed the disappearance of Potchefstroom political activist Boykie Tlhapi. Now, Tlhapi was arrested in 1986 and he disappeared while in police custody. Former apartheid police officer George Mbatu claims that the remains of Tlhapi and many others were dumped in a disused mine ventilation shaft in Klerksdorp.
If they can open the shaft, they don't get the skeletons there, they must charge me.
The damning allegation prompting more families to come forward, and they are pinning their hopes on this claim.
What I'm saying, it's true. Nothing else, but that's true.
It's alleged Boykie Tlhapi's body was dumped here by Stilfontein riot police. Activists in the area call it the shaft of horrors. The Khiba family last saw their son Sam in the same period. It's alleged he was shot during the political riots and his body was loaded in a police vehicle. That was the last time he was seen alive.
The shaft has now been sealed. We searched for Sam everywhere. We couldn't find him. As family, our wish is for the shaft to be reopened. Maybe his remains are still there.
As we probed further, another family emerged, this time around Vredefort in the Free State. Their son, a UDF member, was arrested in Karana Township in Klerksdorp while attending the funeral of a fellow comrade. In March 1986, he was taken to the notorious Stilfontein police station where political activists were detained at the time.
I am longing for my son, and his disappearance has affected me a lot. I'm still asking myself whether I'll die before I know what happened to my son while he was imprisoned.
Politician and former ANC Northwest Deputy Chair China Dodovu recalls when he was taken to the infamous shaft. He claims he was tortured and threatened with being thrown into it. By then, he was in the youth structures of the Mass Democratic Movement.
As young people, as young activists of the time, we would be arrested, taken to different police stations, but there was a shaft, a mining shaft, which was closed. We were taken there by the police, where they brutalized us, they tortured us, they did all this manner of things against the young activists of the time.
Advocate A.B. Dlavane practiced as a human rights lawyer during those turbulent times. As they probed Tlhabi's disappearance, they were led to the shaft. But the search was inconclusive because of logistical factors. 2 months later, the shaft was surprisingly sealed. An independent inquiry body recommended a further probe. This never happened.
The next step will have been to secure proper technology that will actually make it conclusive. That they will say, because of this new technology, now we are confident to say that we didn't find anything.
Next week, we ask police why the matter was not followed up despite recommendations by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Independent Inquiry Body of 1993 and 1994. Selwa Tatai, SABC News, Klerksdorp.
Well, that's where we leave the news for this hour. We will be back at the top of the hour, 11 o'clock, for a full news bulletin. But for now, it's time to take a break. And Kendall's standing by to give you a sports update and to talk about the history of cricket. So don't miss that. That's after this break.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
We are one of the 22 high-burden countries, and out of that, we're number 6, following countries like India, China, and with huge population.
Cough, night sweats, weight loss, and fever, and cough being the most important of those. So, and especially if the cough lasts for more than 3 weeks, then you really have to worry and get tested for TB.
The motivation is to affect behavior change, particularly with people who cough and who may be carrying the bacterium. So encouraging people to use the elbow.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
Good morning, welcome back. Now, Rene promised you I'll be chatting to the author of our brand new, fantastic cricket book. But before we get to that, let's bring you some of the results from yesterday's action in golf, where Brendan Stone won the Alfred Daniel Championship at the Leopard Creek Country Club in Malelane by 7 shots. It is the 23-year-old's second European Tour title after he won the South African Open at the start of the year.
It turned out to be a huge victory margin, but over the front nine, Stone had a lot of pressure on him. Defending champion Charles Schwartzel came flying out of the blocks and managed to draw level with Stone early on. The seventh hole provided a key moment as Stone made a birdie while Schwartzel dropped a shot. A magnificent bunker shot on the 10th hole kept Stone in front, and at that stage Schwartzel was the only one who could catch him. But the defending champion's challenge faded when he dropped 6 shots in 4 holes, which left it all open for Stone to cruise home. He signed for a final round of 5 on the par 67 and finished the tournament on 22 on the par.
I tell you what, it wasn't easy today. Obviously, you got to try and stay focused. I knew that Charles was having a little bit of a struggle on 15 and 16 there, but I knew that I'd set myself a goal for the week of what I wanted to achieve and the score I wanted to shoot, so I managed to achieve that, and now this is mine.
And Japan's Hideki Matsuyama leads the Euro World Challenge in the Bahamas by 7 shots after day 3. He's on 19 under with his closest rivals on 12 under. Louis Oosthuizen is on 9 under and Tiger Woods is on 8 under. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
Now, as promised, the history of sports in South Africa is intrinsically intertwined with the story of our humanity, our politics, our economic endeavours and our social structure. Now, with the prevailing philosophy of South Africa's masters and owners in the past being one of racially based exclusion and suppression, the documenting of African and black lives, especially in sports, was at best poor and at worst non-existent. I'm pleased to say, though, that the code has been cracked. The tide is turning. Joining me from our Cape Town studios in Sea Point is Professor Andre Odendaal, author and historian of the book, the seminal and groundbreaking work, Cricket and Conquest, the history of South African cricket retold. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on this morning.
Thanks very much, Kendall. And if I could just say, it's done with 3 co-authors, Chris Reddy, Christopher Merritt, and Jonty Winch. And it's been a wonderful experience to go into this past and to recognize how much more interesting our history has been than what we've seen in the general history so far. There have been 4 of them covering the period up to 1960, and they basically had one scorecard with 18 names on it of black cricketers in all those years and in thousands of pages. And we've basically discovered a whole different picture, and I hope this book really just brings out something totally new for people. Going right back to the first report of cricket in South Africa in 1806, when we've got a record by a Dutch lawyer who was captured by the British and played twice a week a game called ball casting by the British at the flat ground by the sea at the Lion's Tail, which of course is Greenpoint Common, where cricket has been played uninterrupted for 210 years, wow. Making it the second oldest cricket ground in continuous use outside of England. Only Kolkata in India has a longer record. And of course, the soldiers went to play twice a week, the officers, and following them was a cart with food and wine. Yes. And one doesn't have to guess that it was the slaves and the local people who were bringing the food along, and that General Clavering and some of these portly old officers in the February sun after lunch might not have felt like fielding and sent a youngster to do it in their place. Yes. So the local indigenous, the descendants of slaves and the Eastern Cape African people, where there were 100 mission schools in the 19th century, have some of the oldest cricket traditions in the world. And from that one scorecard, we've gone back to almost reconstitute not only the narrative history, but also statistically the record of black people playing. And we found 22 tournaments with about 500 people selected for representative sides from 1884 onwards. So the Bonato tournament was the version for the excluded cricketers of the Currie Cup. And what is amazing is that it was started in the same decade as the county championships in England and the Currie Cup, both in 1890, and the Sheffield Shield in Australia, 1892-3. And by 1899, the black cricketers had started their own provincial contests for the Benato Trophy. So this is one of the oldest competitive competitions at a provincial level in the world.
That's phenomenal
and similarly,
stuff. Prof,
yeah,
Prof,
and yeah.
Prof, I want to cut in there because clearly the volume of work and the detail that you've actually managed to unearth is really astounding. Some brilliant research went into it, but I can imagine there were a lot of challenges. Verifying the facts, getting the details themselves. Can you please give us an insight into exactly how you and your co-authors managed to get to the point where you're able to speak authoritatively on all of this?
It's actually been a 40-year journey from the time that I started doing my master's and my PhD research. I started looking at the origins of African protest politics in South Africa in the years after the Soweto uprisings and tried to find out where did it all start from. And I was knocked out of my chair when I picked up Imvo Zabansundu, the first independent black newspaper in South Africa, brought out in 1884 by a brilliant 23-year-old journalist called John Tengo Jabavu. And in the editorial column was a statement about cricket, that black people are rough diamonds who can shine and be as good as anyone else in this British game of cricket. And they're determined to show that they're not mere skepsels, but can be full citizens in the Cape Colony. And they use cricket as an example. And in Imvo Zabansundu and Isigidi Misamaxhosa, the early newspapers, were tens and tens of reports. So cricket went with a British missionary education as a way of training young people in these schools, and a deep culture developed. And there were reports from all over the Eastern Cape every week.
All right,
and it's really over many years then that we've tried to go and find each of these tournaments and look in newspapers like the Diamond Fields Advertiser, the Early Argus, the Cape Times, the EP Herald. And you'll often find, like in 1913, one column on the back page with the Currie Cup tournament scores, and then the column next to it, the Benato Trophy, Transvaal playing Western Province. So the diamond magnates in Kimberley, getting up to eat their post toasties and whatever they had in those days, would have been reading about provincial cricket by black players and by white players. And yet, when you see the histories that were written, one scorecard up to 1960 in 100 years, when the reality was completely different.
That's absolutely astounding that that's exactly what the reality came out to be. You write in the book about a cricketer by the name of Krom Hendricks, who was seen by the visiting and touring English sides as one who was a cut above the rest. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found when you wrote about Hendricks?
I think he was one of about 6 players who by 1894 were good enough to play top-class cricket and represent South Africa. So when the English in 1892 beat the South Africans in 2 days in the final test, the local black cricketers challenged them to a game. And Krom Hendricks bowled so well that all the English players said that he reminded them of the Demon Spofford, who was the first great fast bowler to wreak havoc in Test cricket, which only started in 1877. And they said when the South Africa comes on their first tour in 1894, Hendricks must be part of it because he will be a big attraction. And of course, in 1894, that is a terrible year in which a certain person called Cecil John Rhodes was Prime Minister of the Cape. In that year, he put down the Ndebele Rebellion in Zimbabwe through force. He came to the Cape, he passed the Glenn Grey Act, which put in place a segregation attitude and an attempt to deny black people from getting the vote that they had in the Cape at the time. And in the same months, his private secretary was Sir William Milton, who was head of cricket in the Cape. They said Hendricks cannot go to England, even though he was by far the best bowler in South Africa. Had that happened, we would have followed the path of the West Indies, where Sir Larry Constantine's father, Lebrun Constantine, was playing for Trinidad for the first black player in 1893. And when the West Indies went to England in 1900 as a predominantly white team, there were 4 black players, and one of them stayed behind to play county and league cricket, starting a whole tradition of West Indians in the counties and in Test cricket. And we had to wait, of course, because of the colour bar that Rhodes brought in that year, until the 1960s, when people like Basil D'Oliveira, Cecil Abrams, Kuti Neethling went to play in the leagues to showcase the talent that existed, but which in South Africa could not express itself through the formal channels.
Prof, in closing, can you please tell us one of 2 things, please? One would be where to find the book. The other, very important, is which part of writing this book, the first of 4 volumes, gave you the most satisfaction?
The book can be ordered at www.loot, L-O-O-T, as in state capture, .co.za. So www.loot.co.za, /product, /Andre. And it's 268 Rand plus postage, so it's a big one, but it's coming at a nice price. And really, for me, writing the book was the important thing. This and my earlier writing on the African intellectuals that emerged in the 1880s actually changed my entire life. And these people have sort of become real characters that I've lived with for 10 or 20 years. And it's wonderful to be able to share now with the broader public the kind of incredible intellect, imagination, resilience, creativity, and skill that those early people showed until in 1910, the Calabar Constitution and the Land Act started a process of destroying a black middle class that had already emerged and was playing a role in South African society.
Professor, thank you so much. There's so much more we can talk about. There's so much more about the research you went into and all the other. You called Chinua Achebe and you speak to the phenomenon that is South African sports. So thank you very much for coming through. That was Professor Andre Oudenal, co-author of the book Cricket and Conquest, The History of South African Cricket Retold. 1795 to 1914, Volume 1. We've reached the top of the hour. We'll be back shortly with more news, more analysis. You know, you are watching Newsroom.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are 2 things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Nature continues to wreak havoc in some parts of the country, this time around in KwaZulu-Natal.
16-year-old Nhlakanipho and 19-year-old Sinethemba were both hit by lightning. They were asleep inside this rondavel, their home completely gutted.
It's very difficult. I wish it was me who died instead of my children.
In Alexandra, north of Johannesburg, another distraught family. 4 days on, and the Chauke family is still clinging on to hope that the body of their 3-year-old daughter will be found. The search for a Pretoria woman who disappeared after a vehicle was swept away by floods continues. She was driving over the Apis River with her son.
One of the key things that you have there is preservation of the teeth, so that when you can function, you can chew your food. And if they are not taken care of properly, you can lose them.
The most common infection in the mouth is on the tooth, and it's dental caries or tooth decay.
That prolonged contact of the sugary substance, being juice or whatever, was in contact with the teeth for a long time. That's what causes the children to have what you see as rotten teeth.
we have a method that has been developed at Wits, which is called Appropriatech, which allows the person to have dentures delivered in a very quick and simple manner.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news. Did you know the big hole digging started in 1871 and ended on the 14th August 1914? The hole produced 2,722 kgs of diamonds. However, one diamond as huge as 490 carat of stone found in the open prior 1868 gave them the interest to dig. Extracted from 22.5 million tons of soil. Today, the hole sits at a breathtaking 214 meters deep. Kimberley Big Hole attracts tourists from all over the world, taking a vintage tram past the city, then cycling around the Big Hole.
It's 1100 hours Central African time on this Monday, the 5th of December 2016. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Renee Vest. Now, of course, today we've been focusing on the 3rd anniversary of Madiba's death as the world commemorates the passing of former President Nelson Mandela today. Now, the anti-apartheid activist, hailed as the father of the democratic South Africa, died 3 years ago at the age of 95.
So the question that we pose to you today is, what is your favorite Madiba quote? In a short while, we'll also speak to Mr. Vern Harris, archivist for Madiba for a very long time, and he'll tell us a little bit more. So what's your thoughts? And we'd like to get your favorite quote from Madiba. We also have a couple of tweets coming through on that particular question. Let's just take a look at some of those live tweets that's coming through. See if it's on the screen there. And yes, do we have it? No, we don't? Not yet. Okay, not yet. Well, there we go. This one from Malachi says a big no. Well, this is not on the question. This is on the poll. This one says big no. Religion, love, peace, respect, unity, and Ubuntu. Politics today equals hatred, greediness, power over others. Please don't mix the two. Our poll of the day, of course, we asked the question, should politics and religion mix? Or is there a place for it, really?
Yes, so that previous tweet was just doing a bit of a comparison. So Gilbert says that maybe Mr. Zuma and the leader of the 12 Apostle Church should come to me and I'll teach them what the Bible says.
God is omnipresent, says Gilbert Motsetsi. This one from Victor Gaga says politics impacts on people's lives, including religious people. Therefore, it's uncalled for if politicians gag religious leaders. Well, that's a strong one there from Victor Gaga.
And Ali Emmanuel says politics work hand in hand with religion because when politics fail, politicians scream to religion for help.
Well, these are some of your comments. There's another one from Timber. It says, no, you can't mix doom and petrol. Well, that, of course, relates to the Doom Pastor there. These are some of your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But currently the vote says on the poll, 139 votes in. 45 of you are saying yes, there is a place for religion in politics, and 55% are saying no, no, no. Well, keep them coming. We'll read them. Let's now take a look at your news headlines. President Jacob Zuma says that religious leaders should not get involved in politics and rather focus on bringing the community and politicians together. Today marks the 3rd anniversary of the passing of Madiba, with commemorations taking place nationwide. And Cuba has ended a 9-day national mourning for Fidel Castro after laying his ashes to rest in a private ceremony in the city of Santiago. Those are your news headlines. In a short while, Renee will give you your news. But first, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Hearty good morning to you. It's Monday morning. We're in December. We're almost come to the end of the year, and it's coming to a really nice end. I tell you what, with everything that's been happening over the weekend, some interesting stuff coming out of the sporting world. Good morning to you. This is what I've got for you in the sports today.
Well done, Brandon Stone. And that's a win which will mean very nearly as much as a South African Open win, his debut win on the European Tour.
South Africa's Brendan Stone wins big at the Alfred Dunhill Championship, walking away with a cool 2.8 million rand as he obliterates the opposition by 7 clear shots.
Celtic looking for a winner. It's come off the top of the crossbar.
Second place SuperSport United escaped with a point from Bloemfontein after being held to a goalless draw by Celtic.
Space for Cook. It's coming into range, Steve Cook. And it's Ake. Oh my goodness. Well, Bournemouth had iced the cake. There is the cherry on the top.
And in the English Premier League, Liverpool suffer a spectacular meltdown as they concede 3 goals in 14 astonishing minutes to lose 4-3 to mid-table Bournemouth. All this and more I've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin about 11:35. For now, it is back to Renee, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. President Jacob Zuma has appealed to religious leaders to pray for unity in the country. He made the call at a service held by the 12 Apostles Church in Christ in Durban.
A warm welcome at the church's annual Thanksgiving ceremony and support from religious leaders. This in the wake of the recent ANC-NEC meeting where some ministers reportedly asked President Zuma to step down. The message from church leaders here is clear. Leaders must be given the space to lead and learn from their mistakes, as this will help to unite the people. The church says President Zuma must be allowed to finish his term.
Everyone you hate has to be unseated in this government. Who will be in an office? You know, if you respect the people of South Africa, respect the way they voted.
The president said religious leaders must stop meddling in political battles.
Kungasiphathi kahle hle uma sibona abezenkolo ikakhulu abahamba phambili sekuyibo asebenza izinkulumo ezingabonisi ukuthi bayasishumayeza basenza ukuthi senze okuhle kodwa nabo bese bebamba iqhaza kulokhu okumbango wezepolitiki ebese siyathula ke nje ngoba phela singobani silendele ukuhola.
It doesn't feel good to us when we see the church leaders, instead of bringing the communities and the politicians together, but they are there at the front and creating problems and being involved in politics.
Zuma also called for respect of the Constitution, saying it's a tool to improve the lives of people. Simphiwe Makanya, SABC News, Durban.
Veterans of the ANC in the Cape Town area say leaders must reflect on whether they are following in the footsteps of former President Nelson Mandela. Party members gathered in Athlone last night to remember Madiba on the 3rd anniversary of his death. The country's first democratic president died on this day 3 years ago at the age of 95. ANC members say Mandela remains the country's most moral compass. They say he was known worldwide for his enduring and compassionate spirit. Commemorations to keep Madiba's legacy alive are taking place across the country today.
One can talk for hours about Comrade Nelson Mandela. And you know, there were things about him that I admired. He was modest. He wasn't flashy. There were no stories of big parties and dancing girls and wasting money. And this was a sober person who had a joyful life. These are characteristics of a man, a person, a leader who is so part of everything is lived, that it doesn't have to be flashy to see him.
Very important days, especially in the sense that it reminds one of an icon of our struggle, the father of South African liberation, so to speak. This is a day that brings back fond memories of a people committed to fight for liberation, to create a better world.
Years down the line, after the passing of former statesman, residents of his birthplace continue to celebrate his good deeds. This is a reminder and a lesson to other South Africans to emulate this world-renowned icon. Our SABC reporter Zimkita Manginana spoke to Chief Mandela Mandela from Nelson Mandela's Unu rural home, where the family has gathered to lay wreaths.
For us as a family, this is a very intimate moment. Early in the morning, we woke up and visited the graves where Madiba is laid to rest, and placed some flowers in his remembrance on all the graves that are there on site. Madiba was first and foremost very patriotic to South Africa, and also in serving the nation and humanity at large. He committed 67 years of his life to serving humanity, but also he contributed largely to the international solidarity in that he enjoyed a lot of support from the international community during his struggle years in imprisonment, but also when he was released, he went to visit the likes of Yasser Arafat, Muammar Gaddafi, and with the passing of Commandant Fidel Castro, we as a family are very touched that men and women that paved Madiba's way are passing and leaving a legacy for all humanity to follow. And I think it's for us as a family and South Africans at large to continue in the footsteps of these icons, to remain patriotic, also ensure that we serve our nation and humanity at large.
To continue with our discussions on the great icon Nelson Mandela, let's go over to Elvis.
Yes, Renee. Lots of comments, of course, on the death of Madiba 3 years ago, and we're asking you, your favorite quote. How do you remember Madiba? Let's take a look if there's some of those comments that is coming through from some of the comments that we had earlier. Let's see if that is up. This one here coming from Bonani that says, SABC Newsroom, it is in your hands. Remember some of his famous words, it is in your hands. Temba says, poverty is not an accident. Like slavery and apartheid, it is man-made and it can be removed by actions of human beings. Hashtag Madiba. That was one of his famous quotes there that he highlighted. Jabulani says, as long as poverty, injustice and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. Hashtag Madiba. Jabulani there. Malachi says his favorite quote is, to deny people their human right is to challenge their very humanity. Hashtag Madiba quote, Mandela effect. Matuto says, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemies. Tata Nelson Mandela. These are some of your comments. There's a beautiful picture of Madiba as we remembered him today, 3 years ago when he passed. Now, for more on remembering Madiba, we are now joined in studio by Vern Harris, who is the director at the Nelson Mandela Center of Memory. Mr. Harris, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you.
It must be a sad day reflecting back on the day that Madiba passed.
Yeah, I think it's always a tough day for us, but, you know, as he always said to us, focus on the work that needs to be done, and of course there's more and more work to be done. So.
Now, you work very closely with Madiba. Take us through and your experience of working with such an extraordinary icon.
Well, in many ways it was the best of jobs and the worst of jobs because, you know, the privilege of spending time with him, but one also saw the extent to which people exploited him. I mean, I'd go as far as to say that Madiba brought out the worst in everybody. Everybody wanted a photo, everybody wanted a signature, an endorsement, and so on. It was quite tough to see, especially towards the end when he was really getting frail.
How do you remember him?
Yeah, he was a complex human being, and so I don't have any simple image of him.
Yes.
I remember the times he got angry with us, and that was not pleasant. It wasn't cool to be around Madiba when he was angry, but I remember many good times too, great sense of humor. But I think, you know, the one that sticks in my mind is his doggedness, endurance. It didn't matter what the problem was. You could talk about, you know, prison for 27 years, but dealing with a problem in the office, his commitment to let's get it right and let's just keep working at it.
Now, you've been Nelson Mandela's archivist since 2004. How did you get to be appointed, and was there a story behind the story?
Well, at the time I was working at WITS, and Madiba just finished his Burundi peace intervention. So this was 2001, and I got a phone call from the office to come and help him sort out all the documents in the boxes.
Yes.
And once I'd sorted that one out, I was asked to sort another one out, and eventually I went in 2004 to set up an archives program.
Is that so? So it's a long story coming through there. And how was it working with him through that period?
Yeah, you know, it was, for me, really special because the work I was doing and discussing with him, setting up a Centre of Memory, involved him looking at documents, helping us to understand the significance of particular entries in his diaries and notebooks. And so it was all about listening to him. Sadly, so often Madiba would sit and listen to other people's stories. But to actually sit and just listen to his stories was a real privilege.
How important is the Nelson Mandela Centre of Memory to South Africans in general to retain that institutionalized memory?
Well, obviously I'm biased. I think it's critical. You need the record to draw the limits to the power of narrative, people's memories and so on. You need to go back to the archive often to make sure that your information is reliable, accurate and authentic.
Why do you think every South African should actually visit it sometime in their lifetime?
Well, I can guarantee you that a visit to the Centre of Memory will be inspiring. I mean, it doesn't matter what the story is that you walk away with. It might be that Madiba's failed 35 university courses but just kept going. But it's going to leave you with something special.
Now, the centre houses some of the most important heritage resources that chronicles the life and times of Madiba. Is it open to the public at all times, or is there a cost for the public to see it, to go through?
Free of charge, there's no cost. We're open office hours, but you do need to make a booking, and you can do that online or you can phone us to make the booking.
Open every day?
Yeah, every workday.
8 to 5?
8 to 5, yeah.
All right. Now, looking back, other projects that you're currently busy with and that you have done since the passing of Madiba, or are you still focusing only on the legacy of Madiba?
No, he gave us a mandate to address critical social issues. So a lot of the work that we're doing has to do with dialogue spaces. So, for example, we're very much engaged with attempts to address the challenge on university campuses. That's a big project for us.
How big is it? It must be a massive job.
Well, we spent all of Saturday in dialogue. We will be next weekend as well. And it's about trying to find sustainable solutions to these intractable problems.
Yeah. Your favorite quote from Madiba, because we are asking our viewers now today their favorite quote, and you've seen a couple of them coming through. What would be your favorite quote from him?
You know, it's not a published quote. It's something he used to say to me and other colleagues. And it's in the context of people talking too much. He would say to us, why would you take 10 minutes to say something you could say in 1?
Absolutely fantastic. Classical Madiba. Now, will you be celebrating events? Is there any event being celebrated his life and times today at the centre?
We are hosting a small, intimate function. Members of the family will be there. Deputy President Ramaphosa will be giving the keynote.
Mr. Harris, as usual, thank you so much for your time joining us here in studio.
Thank you.
It was Vern Harris, who is the director at the Nelson Mandela Centre of Memory. You have to go there. By the way, the address, for people that want to go there?
It's 107 Central Street, Houghton.
There you have it. So go and see it. Well, today we want to have a look at what you have to say, some of your quotes, your most memorable quotes of Madiba. Let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. But now, back to Renee.
Yes, thank you, Elvis. Of course, shifting our focus from one great icon to another. A week-long national mourning for Fidel Castro has come to an end in Cuba, with his ashes laid to rest in a private ceremony in the city of Santiago. In Havana, the military fired a 21-gun salute to mark this moment.
Santiago de Cuba, birthplace of the Cuban Revolution. It is here where its leader was laid to rest during a private ceremony. On its 1,000-kilometer journey from the capital Havana, Cubans flooded plazas and lined streets to pay their last respects to El Comandante. His remains will be entombed next to independence hero José Martí. Castro claimed Martí's mantle upon overthrowing a US-backed regime in 1959, but Cuba will ban naming any monuments or roads after Castro at his request.
The revolution was consistent with that view, insisting that when he dies, his name and image would never be utilized to designate institutions, plazas, parks, avenues, streets, and other sites.
We are Fidel. Santiago is Fidel. Socialism is Fidel.
Fidel Castro led Cuba for 49 years before his death on November 25th at the age of 90. His death came exactly a decade after he ceded power to his brother Raúl Castro due to an intestinal ailment.
Well, celebrating also the life of the Cuban leader there, Fidel Castro. Now, if you missed our discussion at 9 o'clock this morning, we reflected on what happened at our universities. International communities watched on as South African universities came to a standstill earlier this year. The Fees Must Fall movement caused havoc for the academic programs, and many thought that we would not finish the 2016 academic year. A ranking downgrade was also looming due to the violence and disruptions on campuses. And although South African universities are doing seemingly well in the rankings, there are concerns that next year's movement may cause more and further setbacks for our university's academic progress. University of Johannesburg hosted the BRICS Emerging Economies University Summit, which discussed how to avoid a ranking downgrade in the BRICS nation and how, as a nation, we can address the issue of funding. We were joined in studio by the editor of Times Higher Education World University Ranking, Phil Batty.
I think it's too early to see an immediate impact on the World University Rankings. The rankings are based on a wide range of criteria across research and teaching excellence, so it's a longer-term process. But I think the message that's being sent out to the world is one that South African universities are in turmoil, they're incredibly unstable, and I think that sends out a message in terms of the reputation of South African universities, which is potentially harmful. And crucially, I think there's a problem about talent. Maybe South Africa might lose some of its talent. People won't want to return to South Africa, but also people might leave the universities and seek their careers elsewhere. So there is a risk long term, I think.
Now, for those who don't know about a ranking of a university, can you explain what a ranking actually means and how significant a ranking is for an institution of higher learning?
Yeah, well, our rankings are based on 13 performance metrics. We're looking at 50 million research paper citations. We're surveying tens of thousands of academics around the world. So it's a really rigorous piece of research, and the audience is in the tens of millions. It's influencing how students make decisions about where to study. It influences how universities set their own strategies. It influences inward investment. So the rankings are phenomenally powerful in helping people all across the world understand the strength of universities globally. So they're very, very powerful, and they send a strong message to the world.
So you've been hosting a BRICS and Emerging Economies University Summit this week. What has been the key points that have come out of this discussion this week?
I think one of the main topics of conversation is about how to build capacity, how to improve universities in South Africa and across emerging economies. And one of the biggest issues there is funding, and we see this in South Africa. There is a problem with funding and providing adequate resources to South Africa's universities to compete with the very best in the world, but also talent. It's about making sure South African universities can attract talent from around the world, international students coming here to South Africa, staying here, contributing to the economy, and also the academics, trying to ensure there's enough of an ecosystem that South African scholars remain here in South Africa and take part in the transformation process.
Now, looking back at this year, you mentioned that the Fees Must Fall movement and the disruptions in the universities have created a sense of turmoil throughout on the international spectrum. Going into next year, there is a possibility of this movement continuing. What are the consequences for the universities and their rankings if this movement does continue?
Well, I think there is an issue of perception. We do actually do a reputation survey as part of our ranking, so we ask academics across the entire world, in their many thousands, to rate the reputation of universities. And of course, this sort of turmoil sends out a message. No one wants to see rubber bullets and tear gas on campuses. It's a terrible spectacle. So there is a risk that it would send out a message that South African universities aren't fully functioning. They aren't able to deliver the education they're required to deliver. So there's a potential reputation risk. But I think the longer-term risk is brain drain. Would young, talented scholars want to build a career here in South Africa if they feel they're perhaps unsafe? And importantly, would academics from other parts of the world want to come and study and work here if they feel there's a safety challenge? So I think we need to get a resolution to this problem as soon as possible.
Now, we have quite a few good universities, as far as I understand, on the continent, such as Wits University, as far as I saw, was ranked top university of South Africa. I stand to be corrected on that. University of Cape Town is another one that was also quite high up on the rankings list for Africa. Has the Fees Must Fall movement and the perhaps political instability in the country this year downgraded these top universities?
Well, I think we should be clear. South Africa has great universities. Cape Town is actually fourth among the emerging economies. It's top 200 in the entire world. Wits has joined the top 200 of the world this year. It's top 10 among the emerging economies. You have, obviously, UJ and many other great universities, Pretoria. They're doing well on a global stage. But what is most important, I think, in terms of the global competition is you do need money and you do need talent. And actually, the protests go at the very heart of how do we fund South African universities adequately to allow them to compete properly, because you need the resources to pay the salaries for the right faculty, to build the infrastructure required. So there's a big challenge. How do we retain and protect funding for these great universities? And they will suffer if the funding solution isn't found, and they will suffer if turmoil means that campus life is disrupted and education is halted. That's no question of that.
Looking at some solutions or some methods in improving the institutions going into next year, should we be focusing on teaching, and should we be focusing on more digital platforms being incorporated into our institutions?
Yeah, I think actually probably with the world rankings in mind, a lot of it is about research excellence, making sure that academics in South Africa are producing relevant, real research that's going to change the world, going to change the economy. So talent is very, very important. Can you collaborate more internationally? Can you build more global bridges? Can we have more inter-Africa development? But of course, the conference in UJ, we have 25 countries represented from around the BRICS economies and beyond. So can we collaborate more within the BRICS powers? So collaboration, I think, is so important. Exchanging students for study abroad experiences, exchanging academics for shared scholarship. I think that's very important. But yeah, digital is very important. With how to deliver a quality education with limited resources. There's huge opportunities provided by technology in terms of the flipped classroom. You can have some online learning. You can draw in the best teaching from all over the world these days. You can have lectures from Harvard and Stanford. But I think you still need to protect face-to-face tuition on campus, and that's so important.
Are we there yet to have that kind of online platform for a country like South Africa?
I think so, actually, because the technology is pretty straightforward. You can get a lot of this material straight off the internet. All these, the MOOCs, these mass courses of open online courses. So the very best universities in the world now are putting programs online. And actually what you find is a lot of universities will draw the best pieces from education lectures from all over the world. And it's just an online platform. And then as long as that's supplemented by face-to-face and campus-based activity, which I think is so important for a quality experience, I think you're in a strong position.
What would you say for the universities going into next year that they should really consider in improving their academics, improving Africans producing materials for an international platform? How do we go forward for next year?
Well, I think the most important thing is to try and find a solution to the funding problems. And I think, you know, the ideal of free education is wonderful. I think education is so powerful. It would be wonderful if we could have it for free, if the government fully funded it, but the individual tuition fee, it's all over the world now. There's a balance between the individual paying tuition and the government providing funding. So I think a solution that allows us to continue to improve access to South African universities, whilst also accepting that there has to be more of a contribution made to support the resources and funding available, is a crucial moment. And I think we need to find a political solution to that funding crisis. And I think when that comes, it all becomes quite natural. It's just about building partnerships, building international relationships, looking at where and how African scholars or South African scholars, where they publish their work, ensuring that work's disseminated, because our rankings are based a lot on understanding the influence of research, how much it's cited by other scholars globally, how much it's changing our understanding of the world. And South African universities are in a very strong position. They're very competitive globally, but we just need to find this funding solution that works for everybody. And perhaps there's an element of realism needs to be in place about how do we protect access whilst also accepting the universities need greater funding levels.
The proceedings of the Fees Commission has once again been disrupted.
We as a university do not feel that fee-free higher education currently is feasible.
It's the Mickey Mouse Commission. During in the commission, student grievances, we're not a part of the commission in the program. So that is why we tend to disturb the program.
If you tell me that I can't leave, then you are keeping me hostage.
Some students demanded that UCT lift the suspensions and expulsions of certain students.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
This year alone, around 2 million girls across the country missed a total of 60 days of school due to their inability to afford sanitary pads. Can you imagine using newspapers, cloths or rags every month? Now, recently, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa introduced a new range of free condoms to curb the high rates of HIV and AIDS, yet little has been done to introduce free sanitary pads that will ensure that a young girl's education is not jeopardized. However, there are companies that are attempting to resolve this problem. Now, joining us in studio is the founder of Mimi, a sanitary pad company assisting poverty-stricken girls, Ramona Kasavana. Very good morning to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Can you paint us a picture on how serious the situation actually is?
It's a very serious situation that people obviously overlook. Sometimes I say that because we're dominated by patriarchy, it's not something that people actually look at. For me, growing up in rural KZN and Inanda, I was very prior to this throughout my schooling career. When there was no electricity, I knew the constraints of actually going outside, filling a bucket, and having a quick wash. And I think even after I graduated with an honours degree, it was still shocking for me to drive home, because we still lived there, to see young girls having a wash in the bushes. And then sanitation became an issue. So many years on, I still don't believe that our young women should be using all the things that are objectified to them. They do deserve proper sanitation. And I guess that's why I took it into my own hands 3 years later to make some noise. So,
well, there seems to be several issues that go together with not having access to sanitary pads. Can you share some of the challenges faced by the girls that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that, I've learned as a social entrepreneur that you can't fix everything, but you're very aware of many things. And my business and my whole aim and purpose and vision in life is not to fix everything, but to educate young women about the things that are not spoken about, which are still culturally stigmatized, which is sex, menstruation, taboos, pregnancies. And I remember one of the reasons I actually started was when I worked as a DJ and a TV presenter. I was emceeing for one of the premieres, and everyone goes on about teenage pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, teenage pregnancy. But I kept saying, but no one's really going out and saying, this is how your menstruation works, this is how you become fertile, and this is when you fall pregnant. It's, it's accepted when a girl is pregnant, but no one really goes to the first phase of this whole thing, explaining. So that's what we took. Besides the aspect of menstruation, we took in the sexual education part of it, offering girls. I mean, there's many problems. I mean, there's the lack of underwear, there's the lack of roll-on, there's the lack of soap, there's the lack of perfume. But for me, my greatest passion is sanitary pads. It's a very intimate space to be in. I know that it's a lot of my own research, and I'm constantly knocking on doors with our team, bringing in more research. But the whole issue with menstruation is that it connects so deeply with dignity and confidence and self-esteem and self-worth, and those are things as women that we constantly battle with, even later on in your life. And I just, when we repositioned the business, it was repositioning it for the whole of Africa in Swahili. To say to a girl, Mimi actually means I am. It's to say to her from day one that I am enough. My period is real. Everyone has it, even Beyonce, and that I am who I am. And the most beautiful part is, no matter what color your race is, we all bleed the same. So,
well, just staying on that point, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about the stigmas that still exist. And a while ago, I read a student's blog post that says, "Stop taxing my vagina," which is essentially what a lot of women still feel like is happening. And how do we change the way we view, how we as a society view a woman's menstruation, which is a natural process?
I think that it goes a lot with, and I'm sure you got the shock box that we've sent out. It goes a lot to, and that's the thing that my honours paper had really discussed. It was, why is it that the constructs of femininity via the media has created this mindset that I have to be fresh, clean, white, everything needs to be clinical. Why is it that I can't wear cerise pink pants when I'm menstruating, and I have to constantly wear black? And I really challenge that norm. I personally, for me, I come from a family where when you're menstruating, you're not allowed into a temple, you're not allowed into religious organizations, you're not allowed near anything with a fire. You have to just chill. And it was quite I think now, people are just, my family just accepts it because I'm just so loud about it. But it was very uncomfortable as a teen, because everyone knows you're sick. And it really questions. I know in other societies with our research is that you can't serve food, you can't look at certain people, you can't look at males in the home.
There's a lack of physical contact that you're not allowed to have.
There's a lack of physical. I always say, and I wrote this when we rebranded, I'd pay a lot of money to ask anybody in our family, why is it that I had to swallow 3 raw eggs when I became pubescent for 7 days? You know, what was the issue? And I hate eggs now because it always reminds me of my menstruation when I first got it at 14. So to create an inclusive society is to have honest, open conversations about this, like you said. It's to firstly acknowledge that this is a normal process, and it's to... I remember my little cousin was saying this weekend she cried and cried and cried when she first got her menstruation, and she couldn't deal with it, and then she was like, okay, I got to just deal with this because it's here forever. And I think that's what girls need to understand, and women.
Now, condoms are given out for free, which I think is an argument that a lot of people seem to have at the moment, but pads are not. Why is this? And is this something that's going to be changed?
You know, it's been on policy for many years now, and I personally don't know. I've been approached by the ministers, and I work with them very closely. Obviously, I've made a lot of noise of this, and I'm the only locally produced sanitary pad company in the country. You can never say, because I don't know where it would be stocked, and I get asked this question quite often now for some odd reason, because I'm a thought leader in the field. And the truth is, how are you going to differentiate that in a democracy? Which girls, if there's 5, which there are in LSM, I mean, age group 10 to 19, there's about 5.1 million girls. Who are you going to say is applicable and who's not? I mean, does that mean that you and I don't get free pads? Especially even though there's condoms that are out there for free, I don't see an influx of people using them. You know, there's that the thing is, when something is free and something is paid for, there's an idea of quality attached to it. So I really don't know. I mean, it's interesting. We have a meeting with the Ministry of Women and Children on Friday, so I will ask them again. But I know that it is in conversations right now. So maybe, hopefully, my dream is to see free sanitary pads, but I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Of course, a very important discussion that we need to continue to have.
Definitely.
But thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, Renee.
That, of course, is the founder of MIMI, Ramana Kasavan. But it's time now to take a break. We'll be right back.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport, or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
It's the final hour and the final installment in our bulletin for today. We start off with the story about the Springbok 7 team, which is on course to successfully defend the Cape Town leg of the World Rugby 7 Series this weekend. But Captain Philip Snyman says the team can perform even better despite winning the Dubai Sevens title at the weekend. The Blitzboks beat defending champions Fiji 26-14 in the final of the first tournament of the 2016-2017 HSBC World Rugby 7 Series.
South Africa, wide ball to the flyer.
The Blitzboks were on fire all weekend, winning all their matches, including the cup final against the Fijians.
Blitzbox.
They scored 30 tries in 6 encounters. Chris Dry was named player of the final.
The Blitzbox have hit back.
Top try scorer Siabelo Sanatla, the player of the tournament. The Blitzbox picked up a handy 22 points and go into this weekend's edition in Cape Town as log leaders.
Look at the celebrations.
There will be expectations and we need to start all over again. And yes, it was a great tournament for us in Dubai, but there's always room for improvement, and I think we can work on 1 or 2 small things that we can do better next weekend. I still think that we can be a better team than we were this weekend.
The team is looking forward to defending their title on home soil.
You only get one opportunity to play in front of a home crowd. I think we as a team we really cherish that, and we really just like to thank for the supporters to coming out and support us.
For the Cape Town leg, the Blitzbox have been drawn in Pool A, together with Australia, the USA and Russia. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
So let's take to social media to see what you've all had to say about that amazing performance by the Blitzbokker. Stuart Masson, well done Blitzbokker. See how South African rugby team should play. The team and coach all supposed to be there. Yes, present, clocked in and doing the hours. Rob S. Blitzbokker, well done at the BBs. Professional, determined. Now, SARU need to wake up and pay you guys what the SBs are paid. The Springboks need to be sharing their salaries with the Blitzbokker, he reckons. Keith Coventry, congrats Blitzbokker, well deserved. See you in Cape Town. Yes, I was there last year. The inaugural Sevens in Cape Town. What a fantastic tournament it's going to be over the next few years. Siyakola, Blitzbokker, lots of muscles, lots of happiness, lots of smiling. Blitzbokker Sevens. GRP reckons, well done team and management. Cannot wait to see you in Cape Town. Fantastic stuff. The Cape Town Sevens, I tell you, promise to be one of the best sevens on that tour. Now, second place SuperSport United came away with a point from their foray into the lair of Bloem Celtic. We also had another result over the weekend where Maritzburg United played another match. Let's have a look and see what was packaged for this.
Maritzburg United had an opportunity to score first, but was prevented by keeper Oscarine Masuluke. And at the other end, Bongani Mpandle produced a spectacular save to deny Baroka a goal. United came close to scoring after a goal-mouth scramble, but the home side cleared their lines. So Ratabile wasted the scoring chance, hitting the side netting with only Mpandle to beat. Zimbabwean Evans Rusike missed the target by a few inches from outside the penalty box. Substitute Sheldon van Wyk gave United the lead after Masuluke spilled the ball into his path. In Bloemfontein, SuperSport United had a chance to take the lead against Celtic after a through ball by Thabo Mnyamane intended for Thuso Phala. However, keeper Patrick Dinyap got to the ball before Phala. Keeper Riyad Petersen denied Celtic a goal following a good move. Celtic were slowly getting confident going forward, only to fail to score when they reached the final third. Celtic had a chance to snatch the 3 points after being awarded a penalty. However, Ketogwake Masugu hit the crossbar.
It happens in football. Somebody had to take the penalty and he felt confident to take the penalty, and we have been practicing them. We had practiced them even yesterday, even Friday, and he scored them there. So we had a belief in him. Most of them they have been scored the penalties, but during that time, the decision, it has to be taken by them.
It's been a heavy schedule. It was a really hot day, so it was never going to be a great game of football. There was more mistakes in the game than there was good things. But I think if you just simplify the whole game, Bloemfontein didn't play a lot better than us, but they did want it more than us, and therefore they held the momentum for almost all of the game. There were only small patches where we actually, where we held sway, and that's not good enough.
of the PSL results from the weekend, just to bring you up to speed with everything that happened on Saturday as well as on Sunday. A quick reminder, on Saturday, Pirates 2-2 against Highlands Park. Athlone Stadium was where Ajax Cape Town beat Golden Arrows 1-0, getting all 3 points. Kaizer Chiefs, they seem to be in trouble, aren't going very far anytime soon. Chippa United 3-1 against Chiefs at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, and Free State Stars went all the way to Loftus Versfeld to come back with a 4-1 drubbing. Platinum Stars 2-3 against Polokwane City at the Royal Bafokeng Stadium, and yesterday, just a quick reminder, 0-0 Bloem Celtic against SuperSport United, and Baroka FC, they lose to Maritzburg United at home at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium. Having a look at the log standings, looking at the top 8, start right at the top. Yes, surprise and behold, newcomers, Cape Town City FC played 12, they've won 7 and are sitting on 24 points with only 2 losses there. SuperSport United second on 21 points. They really could have done better, and they might actually have been in first position this week. Bidvest Vets and Polokwane City bring up the rest of the top 4. Orlando Pirates, Golden Arrows, Chiefs and Mamelodi Sundowns, the top 8. Sundowns have only played 8, as you'll see there. Now to the bottom half of the log, right to the bottom, you see in the relegation zone Free State Stars and Highlands Park. 11 matches played by Highlands Park on 8 points, have won a single game, sitting on a -10 goal difference. Scary stuff there. Maritzburg United in 9th, Chippa United 10th, Ajax Cape Town 11th, Baroka FC in 12th position, and Bloem Celtic 13th, where Platinum Stars are sitting on 9 points, and they played 11 matches. Now, in the English Premiership, Liverpool wasted a golden opportunity to take advantage of Manchester City's Saturday defeat to Chelsea and claim second spot on the log. Jurgen Klopp's men were downed 4-3 by Bournemouth, while Manchester United were held to a 1-1 draw by Everton. Hold on to your seat. Here are the highlights.
Mane, clever, decisive. Here's Henderson. Now it's Divock Origi, and Boric has come again. He's misjudged that too. That is a great finish. Emre Can. That's a good response. Fraser. And Cook. Number 3 makes it 3-3. Space for Cook. It's coming into range, Steve Cook. And it's Ake. Oh my goodness. Well, Bournemouth had iced the cake. There is the cherry on the top. Goalkeeper has come. Ibrahimovic has hit bar and post. Scraped away. Flag stays down. Referee's Arno has told him that Zlatan Ibrahimovic has scored for Manchester United.
Barry.
Penalty against Marouane Fellaini of all people. Leighton Baines scores for Everton. Alonso on his heels. Navas whips it in. Cahill! Own goal! Fabregas. Terrific pass. Costa! 1-1! Taken on by Hazard. Turning is Costa. Williams ahead of him. Kolarov has some catching up to do. It's William! It's 2-1 Chelsea! A blue break of lightning speed. Hit early by Alonso. Hazard's on his way here. Kolarov's the only defender. It's Eden Hazard! 8 in a row! Still top of the pile. Chelsea.
What a way to start the week on some fantastic action from the English Premier League. Elvis, I know that you're a big fan of one of these teams, and I'm wondering, how did your team do this weekend?
Well, it, held out up until the last minute, and that was just devastating,
Marouane Fellaini said to be the villain. I really don't think he hacked the guy. It was an honest mistake in the penalty area.
Overcooked it a little bit, Anyway, that's where we got to leave it for today. Thank you so much for all your comments on the question as well as on the poll, participating in a poll that we had for you here this morning. We'll see you bright and early, same time, same place tomorrow. My name is Elvis President.
I'm Kendall Makhamate.
Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
Ligamos.